Hunter x Hunter, start with the prison power. Chapter 41. Hearing Lin's doubts, Jin laughed ha. Ha. And even felt like he couldn't breathe. Seeing Jin's appearance, Lin looked helpless. He really didn't know what he said wrong. After laughing for a while, Jin didn't stop, he just held his stomach and made a chug sound. After a period of time, after Jin's novelty wore off, Jin took 2 deep breaths and said, Lin, although you are extremely talented, it is obvious that your basic skills are not good enough. What do you mean? When Jin said these words, Lin knew that his exposure to Nian was too short. Although he had been reading books to supplement the basics, Nian ability was so easy to learn and difficult to master. In the past, Lin could only make up for part of it by reading books, and there was still a lot that he had not learned well. It would be best to have a teacher who could teach him step by step and point out his own shortcomings. That was why he was so excited when he joined the Shinzen Ryu. What do you mean? Lin, have you forgotten the application skills of the 4 major abilities? The moment he heard Jin speak, Lin felt his brain buzz, and a feeling of enlightenment appeared instantly. He exclaimed, Zhou. It's Zhou. Wrapping the stone gate with Zhou can improve the solidity of the stone gate. Because the stone gate, the effect of the divine characters isolates the mind energy, so it is necessary to make Shimon's divine characters ineffective. Seeing Lin's appearance, Jin smiled happily and said, Nian is a very special existence. I have always told you to abandon the ability to read and understand the importance of people, because the ability to read is just a means. Talent is the foundation of everything. Is talent the foundation of everything? Listening to Jin's words, Lin fell into reflection. Remembering that after the battle with Hisoka, his mentality actually became a little expanded, and he felt that he already had the capital to dominate the world. Now that Lin thinks about it, is Hisoka an ordinary person? How much the opponent will grow in a year, Hisoka is not at his strongest during the duel. Later, I joined the Hunter Association and defeated the enemy Haka. I was a little complacent at that time, thinking that as long as I didn't provoke the V5 level big forces, I could have a good time wherever I went. It's really stupid now that I think about it. I can't even explore ruins by myself. It was not until the prison was upgraded to level 3 that her mentality became even more intense. Silva also warned herself about what Mr. Jin said, but did she really listen to it? Maybe I'm just complacent. There was a hint of bitterness at the corner of Lin's mouth, and his face was a little disappointed. Then he looked at Jin and couldn't help but secretly said in shock, this guy has never used his telekinesis ability in the original work. It can't be that this guy only relies on telekinesis. Application is enough to deal with all situations, so don't be too lazy to use your own developed telekinesis abilities for fear of trouble. Looking at Jin, who was eating food to replenish his strength, the more Lin thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was right. Mr. Jin, I have remembered everything you said. The strongest person is always a person, and you will never go far if you rely on external things. Lin's tone was firm and persistent, and Lin couldn't help but rise to another level in Jin's heart. Jin wiped the food residue from his mouth with his hand, and said to Lin, don't worry so much, you are still young for a long time, and you might leave me behind at some point. Lin chuckled. At this moment, his heart was extremely clear and he already had a direction for the way forward. How long do you need to recover to fully regain your strength? Lin knew that it took a lot of money for King Kong to inscribe the divine words, but the relationship between the two was also a cooperative one, and they had to understand each other's current status. Actually, it doesn't take long, but the mental energy just consumed is a bit large, so it will take some time. Jin's attitude seemed indifferent, but Lin could clearly tell that this guy's energy must have been excessively consumed. Lin didn't know the specific consumption of the divine words, but he could still feel Jin's state. Lin thought for a while and said to Jin, you can take a rest for a while to recover. After you adjust your condition, I will use Zhou to open the stone door. 1 hour. I need to sleep deeply for an hour. During this time, my safety will be left to you. Jin's tone was extremely relaxed, he stretched out and fell asleep leaning against the wall of the passage. Regarding Jin's trusting behavior, Lin once felt Jin's personality charm and secretly said, he is indeed a popular character. Although he is essentially a shy person, this kind of courage is not something ordinary people can possess. Jin fell into a deep sleep, and Lin was responsible for guarding the surrounding situation. The current location of Lin and Jin is on the periphery of the ruins. Before their arrival, possible dangers on the periphery have probably been eliminated by the exploration team. With a cautious attitude, Lin would use circle to explore the surroundings every 5 minutes. As time passed, Lin stopped using the circle to explore, because Lin knew that if a strong man like Jin said he slept for an hour, he would naturally wake up after an hour. As Jin let out a groan, Jin opened his eyes, stood up from where he was, stretched, and moved his body. Jin, how is your recovery? Rin asked with concern. Jin felt it for a while and said, it has recovered to about 7,788, which will not be a big problem for the next exploration. Lin nodded, looked at Shimin and said, are you ready? I'm going to open the door. Do it. As Jin finished speaking, Lin placed his palms on both sides of the door, and the telepathy in his hands slowly wrapped the stone door. Drink! With a low cry, Lin's hands gradually exerted force, and the dust under the stone door began to vibrate as the stone door slowly moved. Finally, Lin pushed the door open enough for one person to enter. When he felt that it was passable, Lin stopped. The moment he opened the stone door, Lin was almost blinded by the shining gold inside the door. After getting used to it, he looked inside the door. What Lin and Jin saw was a huge golden coffin, surrounded by precious burial objects. At a cursory glance, there are countless gold, gems, and various precious items piled up around the coffin to form the shape of mounds. The surrounding walls are still full of murals as in the passage, but this time the difference is that there is some text next to the murals. Jin walked straight towards the direction of the murals and text, while Lin checked to see if there were any traces of the exploration team nearby. After walking around the mausoleum, Lin was surprised to find no trace of the exploration team. No trace was found, which became the biggest problem at this time. According to Biscay's temperament, it was impossible for the other party not to be tempted by the gems in the mausoleum. Then, Lin looked at Jin, who studied the words and murals engraved around him very seriously. Not wanting to disturb the immersed Jin, Lin focused his attention on the closed coffin in the center of the mausoleum. Chapter 42. Looking at the gold coffin in front of him, Lin couldn't help but sigh. The Lulak clan was really wealthy back then. The outside of the gold is very smooth and there is no text information, but Lin will not open it without permission. After entering the ruins, the dominant relationship between Jin and Lin was that Jin was the leader and Lin was the collaborator. Lin wouldn't do anything unnecessary without Kim's permission. Jin obviously understood this, but neither of them said it explicitly. This was a tacit understanding between the two people. After waiting by the coffin for a while, Lin also replenished some water. After all, moving the stone door just now was also a very physically demanding task. Jin read the words and murals on the tomb, turned a blind eye to the gold and silver treasures around him, walked to Lin, and looked around the golden coffin like Lin. Jin said to Lin with a solemn face, this is not a corpse, but a sealed entrance. Entrance. Lin was a little confused. He was a little confused about the purpose of the Lulak tribe in building this ruins. How could such a large golden coffin become the entrance? Jin thought for a while, organized his words and said, the explanation on the stone wall over there is very clear. This is the forbidden land of the Lulak tribe, and it is also called the place of resurrection of their ancestors. According to the description, their ancestors and the treasures of their race were placed here, and it was predicted that one day their ancestors would return to the embrace of the tribe with the treasures. Lin thought deeply, the Lulak clan is crazy, how can such a thing be possible? Facing Lin's words, Jin suddenly felt uneasy and said, you can't say that. There is never a shortage of all kinds of strange things. Even I myself have encountered many things that I find incredible. There are two possibilities now. One is that the exploration team entered the inside of the coffin. There may be no danger, but they can't get out. Then Jin continued under Lin's solemn gaze, the second type is that they touched some taboo, causing everyone to be damaged. Jin looked at Lin and said seriously, Lin, what's your choice? To enter or not to enter? Mr. Jin, from what I know about you, the secret of the Lulu K clan is right in front of you. Even if I don't enter, you will find out. Of course I will go with you. After all, the exploration team is not sure whether all the army was destroyed. Lin smiled, knowing that this was Jin's way of exchanging ideas with himself, and everyone must be mentally prepared to face the unknown. Hey hey! Jin touched his nose and smiled, push it away, let's go in and see what's going on inside. Rin slowly pushed the lid of the coffin, and the interior of the coffin appeared in front of their eyes. Sure enough, as Jin said, there was no body in the coffin, but rows of stairs. As for the inside, because there is no light, the visibility is not high, there is only a dark hole. Jin reached out and touched the scratches on the golden coffin and said, "Sure enough. The exploration team went down from here, and the scratches on it were obviously made not long ago." Then Jin analyzed, "Lin, I can confirm that the exploration team is down here, and the mental energy barrier outside the ruins, the previous stone gate, and the golden coffin in front of us are most likely not closed by the exploration team, but this the defense mechanism of this ruin, they must have encountered something." Lin looked at the dark hole, feeling as if he were staring into an abyss. "Get off." After saying that, Lin turned on the lighting equipment above his head and was the first to walk out. What a reliable guy. Seeing that Lin was one step ahead of him, Jin smiled, with unconcealed appreciation in his eyes, and then turned on the lighting tool and followed Lin. Ryan, who was walking in front, did not see Jin's expression. For him, everything now relies on Jin's skills and experience. In the two-person team, Jin is the least likely to cause trouble, so he must play a role. In the face of unknown dangers, walking in front obviously plays a role in exploring the way. What Lin did was to put himself in the most dangerous position, but it also gave Jin time to respond. Jin also understood Lin's thoughts very well and expressed his appreciation for Lin's actions. After all, if he had to say some things in person, it would create a gap between the two and sow the seeds of distrust. The dark passage was clearly illuminated by lamps. Compared to the outside of the passage, there are no murals or words here, but the surrounding walls seem to have been washed away by some force, and are full of cracks. The two people walking in the passage were in perfect agreement without saying a word, and they were fully alert for possible changes. After walking for an unknown amount of time, light finally appeared in front of Lin and Jin, causing the two to slow down their pace and become more vigilant again. Walking closer, Lin asked, "Is it another forking road?" "Left." This sentence was said by Lin to Jin. Jin did not speak when he heard the words, but just nodded. After receiving the information confirmed by Jin, Lin cheered up and walked towards the left. In the passage, Lin discovered that the surrounding light was emitted by irregular stone-like objects. This made Lin curious, who had seen such an item for the first time, but he knew that now was not the time to ask such things. Turning off the lighting equipment to avoid unnecessary losses, Lin explored the path for Jin in front and walked towards the depths of the passage. After walking for an unknown amount of time, a brighter exit appeared in front of the two of them. Lin gestured to Jin with his eyes, and Jin nodded, signaling to move forward. Lin took a deep breath, adjusted his posture, raised his feet and walked towards the light that resembled an exit. The moment he passed through the exit, Lin's eyes were flashed by the light in front of him. Squinting his eyes and looking upward, he saw a huge luminous stone in a huge diamond, which shone like daylight. Observing the surrounding environment, Lin and Jin were shocked by the scene in front of them and could not react for a long time. Jin realized what he saw when he saw the scene in front of him. It turned out that no matter which way he went at the fork, he would reach here, but if he went to the left, he would see a platform that led directly to the throne. On the right is a mass grave with countless corpses piled up. Seeing this scene, Jin murmured, "Is it a sign of status to separate the two?" Ignoring Jin, who was muttering to himself, Lin noticed the exploration team sitting together on the throne platform the moment his vision became clear. It's just that the exploration team was in a strange state at the moment. Although they were sitting together, their eyes were closed and they were motionless. Lin instantly became cautious. Jin patted Lin's shoulder lightly and held out a finger. Without saying any more words, Lin looked at his fingers with Ning and said secretly, "Sure enough, Jin is conveying some kind of message." "Jin," the words on his fingers kept changing. Lin also understood what Jin wanted to say, and then looked at the skeleton on the throne. The corpse was wearing gorgeous clothes and was dragging a very gorgeous box between his hands, but the lid of the box had been opened. Faced with this situation, Jin's tips were very simple. Don't make any noise or make any movements. The exploration team seemed to have touched some taboo. When Jin saw the appearance of the exploration team, he thought it might be the power of the rule system. After observing quietly for a while, Lin didn't even feel a trace of thoughts after death. Just when he was about to see what Jin had discovered, he suddenly saw Jin grabbing his arm and dragging him back into the passage. Lin, who was dragged into the passage, saw the heavy expression on Jin's face. For some reason, his heart thumped and he had a bad premonition. Chapter 43. Jin dragged Lin back into the passage. Under Lin's confused gaze, he pointed to his mouth and signaled Lin not to speak. Then he took a few steps in front of Lin and finally motioned for Lin to follow him. Seeing Jin's actions, Lin understood it and recalled in his mind an assassination method used to beat the enemy in the Haka family's collection. This kind of step is not difficult and allows people to walk without making any sound. It is called silent step and is equivalent to the prerequisite skill of limb bending. After Jin's warning, the two walked a long way in the passage until they reached the entrance of the golden coffin. The only difference this time was that after both of them came up, Jin immediately closed the golden coffin and exhaled heavily. It was so dangerous just now, but fortunately we were careful enough. Hearing Jin's relieved voice, Lin began to wonder. He couldn't figure out what could make a strong man like Jin so nervous. What did you just discover? Lin asked doubtfully. Jin's face gradually became serious, and he said word by word, S-level designated isolation creature. Time. Light. Ant. Hearing Jin's words, Lin's heart skipped a beat, and the uneasy feeling just now rushed into his mind. Lin didn't know what kind of creature Time Ant was, but he knew what it meant to be an S-class designated isolation creature. For example, the Chimera ants in the original novel are nothing more than Class B designated quarantine objects. Now Jin told Lin that the S-class designated isolation object was still named Time, so one can imagine how much danger there is in it. What does Mr. Jin know about Time ants? Lin asked doubtfully. Hearing the question, Jin's expression became more solemn and he said, Time ants are arthropods and belong to the family Formicidae. According to the description of the designated biological isolation catalog formulated by V5, this creature feeds on time. Any living object that is injured by this creature will irreversibly lose part of its life. Hearing this, Lin also understood how terrifying the time ants were. They were simply harvesters of life. Irreversible means that it essentially takes away part of a person's life. Seeing Lin's surprised expression, Jin sighed and said, Did you think this was the end? This kind of creature can use the power of time in its body to reproduce forcefully, and eventually it can form a huge ant tide. Although the time ants bred do not have the ability to devour time, their attack power is extremely strong. I don't know how strong it is. The most terrifying thing is that if the queen ant dies, the time swallowed up in her body will explode, forming a time domain. Everything within the domain will be eroded by time. This erosion is more like a rule than the ability to think. Hearing this, Lin's eyes widened. He didn't expect that such a creature existed in this world. Could this creature come from the Dark Continent? Rin asked in a low voice. Jin thought for a while and said, this kind of creature probably ran to Lake Mobius because it couldn't survive in the Dark Continent. Because it is too weak, the gatekeeper will not notice it. Lake Mobius is a professional term for people who know the Dark Continent, a collective name for the 6 continents. The reason why Lin has great expectations for this world is that he knows that the so-called 6 continents are just a remote corner of this world, so he has expectations for becoming a strong man and exploring all kinds of unknowns. Even now, Lin would never have imagined that the creature that came into contact with the Dark Continent for the first time turned out to be an S-class designated quarantine species with such weird abilities that the cost of killing the time ants was no less than suicide. But this so-called weakness has brought an unbearable burden to this continent. Lin joked with a wry smile. Yes. Lin. Jin sighed and explained, this kind of creature has only appeared once in history. That time a time ant almost caused the destruction of a continent, so it is called S-class designated quarantine organisms. Lin, you have to know that although the so-called S-level does not represent how powerful the time ant is, it does represent the degree of disaster it can cause to the human world. Lin's face became darker and darker as Jin explained, and even at this moment, he felt extremely insignificant. Then what should we do now? Notify the association. Rin's voice was a little hoarse, which was caused by excessive nervousness. Jin thought for a while and said, after I saw the appearance of the exploration team just now, I can confirm that they are fine. It may be that the telekinesis ability of one of the team members protected them. Unfortunately, it has been almost 5 days since their accident. It is very likely that this ability is about to reach its limit. Both Lin and Jin fell silent at this moment. They knew that with the current situation, they were faced with 2 choices. Choose one, notify the Hunter Association, fight against the Time Ants, save the exploration team, and finally eliminate the Time Ants in the ruins. This is a very dangerous method. Regardless of whether it can be carried out forcefully, assuming that the exploration team and the rescue team are wiped out, the I-Chen continent will be over. Option 2 is to wait for rescue from the Hunter Association. For Lin, this option is no less than seeing Bisji in danger and not saving him. When Lin was in a dilemma, Jin took out a bottle of water from his backpack and handed it to Lin, comforting him. Actually, there is no need to be so pessimistic. After taking the water from Jin, Lin looked at Jin blankly, wondering what Jin thought about what happened next. Jin Wonner smiled and said, "Actually, I don't have any good methods, but what I know is that the reason why people are human is that they can find solutions to problems in different environments." After hearing Jin's words, Lin just opened the bottle and took a sip, feeling the moisture in his throat. Lin wanted to complain about Jin, and it was the same as not saying it, but for some unknown reason, he couldn't say it out loud. Jin sat opposite Lin, took out a card from his clothes, and slowly poured telekinesis into it. Record. Teleport. Nitro. As Jin finished speaking, the card in his hand disappeared. After the card completely disappeared, Jin glanced at Lin and said, "It's just a small trick. In about 20 minutes, Nitro will know what's going on here. Now it's our turn." With doubts, Lin asked doubtfully, "Us? What is your plan?" Jin smiled mysteriously and explained, "Of course we need to replenish our physical strength, then fight in and rescue the exploration team. Of course, being able to deal with the time ants is the best." After hearing Jin's words, Lin exclaimed, "Punch in." "That's right." Jin nodded firmly, not paying attention to Lin's shocked gaze. At this moment, Lin couldn't understand Jin's thoughts at all. Although he didn't know what was going on inside, it was not a problem between the rescue team and the exploration team. Instead, if he was not careful, the entire Aegean continent would face a major disaster. After Jin finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something, and warned Lin, "By the way, you must be careful when fighting. I just saw important documents on some stone statues inside. Don't destroy them. I still care about them. The content is very interesting." Chapter 44. Lin did not expect that when Jin said to break in, he was really prepared to break through by force, rather than having any plan. Looking at Jin blankly, Lin felt that his brain could no longer keep up with the speed of understanding, and said blankly, "How to fight?" "Of course with fists," Jin said matter-of-factly. Lin slapped his forehead with his hand, and the momentary pain made him sober. Jin said it very straightforwardly, and Lin also understood what Jin meant, but he still couldn't figure out the specific key points. Looking at the troubled Lin, Jin secretly smiled, but he didn't expect to be seen by Lin. The moment he saw Jin's smile, Lin realized that this guy was starting his bad fun again. "Mr. Jin, please tell me what you are thinking now." Lin looked at Jin helplessly. At this moment, he understood why Jin in the original novel was so unlikable. He was completely based on his own bad taste and did not consider the mood of others. Seeing Lin's helpless expression, Jin seemed to be satisfied. He took out food and water from his bag and said, "Eat something first." After hearing this, Lin picked up a bag of rations and started eating. He knew that if he didn't eat now, he might not have the chance to eat in the future. Jin looked at Lin, who had already begun to eat, and also took a bag of rations. While eating, he said, "I just said, the so-called S level does not represent how powerful the time ant is, but just represents its influence on the human world. Catastrophic level. So we can destroy it at some cost, as long as we are careful not to be attacked." After hearing this, Lin gradually understood Jin's thoughts. "But what method should we use? And we don't know how many ants are reproduced." Lin looked at Jin, waiting for Jin's next words. "I just sorted out the information I know about the time ant so far. I said before that the time ant was recorded because it caused disasters and was solved," Jin said while chewing food. Lin nodded, "So you are going to use the previous methods to eliminate time ants?" "No." After rejecting Lin's answer, Jin said firmly, "This proves that time ants can be killed." After finishing speaking, Jin explained to Lin and added, "In nature, the instincts of all species are derived from evolution, and the same is true for humans. You can think about why time ants have the instinct to reproduce." Lin pondered for a while and suddenly realized, it's because the time ant itself is not very strong. Although it has weird abilities, its own weakness requires him to breed some offspring to help him hunt. Get things. Well, exactly like this." Jin mumbled a response while chewing his food. Suddenly, Lin had great confidence in what Jin said about hitting it in. Jin swallowed the food in his mouth, took a sip of water and said, Lin, you know how to use the release ability, right? A little bit, the power will change based on the amount of thought. Rin remembered the telekinesis bomb he developed when fighting Hisoka, but he didn't expect it to come in handy at this critical moment. Jin put the finished garbage into his backpack, wiped his mouth and said, that's good. Although the time domain will be formed after the death of the time ant, but if we use the release system to kill it from a distance, then we will not be affected. The only thing I'm afraid of is the emergence of the ant tide and the self-destruction of time ants. At the moment Jin finished speaking, Lin felt that if Jin hadn't been with him during this rescue, no one else would have been able to achieve this level of rescue. Lin looked at Jin, his eyes full of trust and said, when will we start taking action? Jin thought for a while and said, there is no rush to act. There are some key points that need to be thought through. The most important point is... Halfway through the words, Jin didn't say any more, and Lin couldn't help but ask, what is it? Jin said seriously, if we encounter an emergency or a situation that we cannot handle, I will choose to evacuate immediately. In an instant, Lin understood what Jin meant. Basically, if he really couldn't complete the task, Jin would find a way to evacuate alone. And to prevent the time ants from causing disaster, they will find ways to seal off everything in the ruins, including of course Rin. Understand? Lin knew very well that Jin could not be blamed for saying such things. After all, Lin is not his biological son. Whatever he decides to do, he must bear the risks involved. Jin's implicit words in advance are much better than those who stabbed him in the back at the critical moment. Hearing Lin's affirmative answer, Jin pointed out 2 fingers and said, 2 hours, we will start planning in 2 hours. After saying that, Jin rested on the spot, and within a few seconds his breathing began to become lighter. Lin knew that Jin had not recovered from the consumption of inscribing the divine words before, and was now preparing for the big battle in 2 hours. Jin could rest, but Lin could not. The previous consumption was not great, so Lin silently took on the job of guard. Chewing the food in his mouth carefully, Rin began to recall every detail of his life after arriving in this world, and found that he had thought of many things too simply. Just like this time with Jinxia ruins, Lin even felt like he was holding Jin back. Time passed minute by minute, until 2 hours later, Jin woke up from his deep sleep. Stretching, Jin said cheerfully, are you ready? No problem, I'll go in front. With a chuckle, Lin reached out and pulled out a long knife from the air, which was none other than prison warrior Wu Sheng. Looking at the long knife in Lin's hand in surprise, Jin said with some surprise, I didn't expect you to have a weapon of the materialization system. Nothing. I hope we can successfully eliminate the time ants this time. After all, there will be more challenges waiting for us in the future. Lin turned his head and pushed open the golden coffin, and walked down at the lead. Jin Rao followed Lin with interest. He could feel that Lin had changed a lot during the rest period. Although his strength had not improved much, his mentality was indeed different. Continuing deeper into the ground, neither of them spoke. The sound of footsteps was completely hidden under the special steps. All the lighting equipment on the head was turned on, and they were fully alert to any disturbance. After cautiously moving forward, Lin and Jin reached the fork in the road again, and this time they chose the left without any doubt. When the two reached the end of the passage again, Lin turned to look at Jin and made gestures. Looking at Lin's irregular sign language, Jin understood the meaning, but his expression became more solemn. After Lin saw that Jin understood what he meant, he made an okay gesture. Jin understood that this was Lin's decision, and he must respect his thoughts, and then nodded heavily. Chapter 45. Seeing that Jin agreed to his plan, Lin walked slowly to the entrance, took a deep breath, and rushed in at a very fast speed with Wushan in hand, followed closely by Jin. The moment Lin entered, he began to observe the surrounding environment. It was still the same as before, but this time he knew what kind of situation he would face. The footsteps were still silent, and Lin and Jin rushed towards Biscay and his party at extremely fast speeds. This was one of the plans of Lin and Jin. When they came in before, they did not disturb the time ants, but Jin discovered the reproductive bodies of the time ants. After discovering it, the two of them immediately retreated. This time, the two came with the attitude of giving it a try. It would be best if they could wake up the expedition team without disturbing the time ants. In this way, 2 people desperately save 4 people, and 6 people fight together. If they are lucky, they can escape together. Just when Lin and Jin were still halfway away from the exploration team, a large number of black ants crawled out of the corpse pit like a torrent. Seeing this, Lin immediately turned around and ran back. When he passed by Jin, he nodded to Jin. At this time, Lin did not conceal his footsteps at all, jumped down from the passage, and stood on the edge of the corpse pit. The training on his body was turned to the extreme, and the burst of qi enveloped his whole body and the long knife. Stand up. Whether you succeed or not depends on you. With a silent thought in his heart, Lin raised his long knife and struck it hard. In an instant, a blade of light flew out and chopped up a large piece of the time ant's reproductive body. This is a usage that Lin has just researched. Using the ability of the release system, combined with the speed of wielding Unforgivable, it can produce the same effect as the sword light in the novel. Seeing that this method was indeed effective and could cause damage to these reproduction bodies, Lin's eyes burst out with excitement, and he waved the wusheng in his hand one after another, and a series of sword lights swung out from the wushen. Unfortunately, Lin's power is always limited. Because the attack range is limited, the time ant propagation body is getting closer and closer to Lin's position. For a moment, Lin remembered the scene in the original work where Jinyo released the dragon stars. A giant dragon rushed into the sky, and at the moment of disintegration, a series of mental arrows rained down. Lin's eyes flashed, and he constantly adjusted the form of thought energy that he wielded with each knife. Drink! Lin let out a low roar and slashed out a blade of light. It split into countless tiny blades of light halfway through the flight and slashed at the approaching time ant reproduction body. Seeing that his trick was working, Lin did not dare to take it lightly, because the reproductive bodies were still approaching, and his potential energy was not unlimited. He only hoped that Jin could wake up the exploration team quickly. When Lin blocked the reproduction of time ants, Jin also encountered big trouble. In front of Jin, an ant with a red gem on its head and a golden body blocked Jin's way. Jin's expression was solemn, knowing that this was the queen of time ants, but he didn't expect that this queen could blend in with the surrounding environment. She was almost attacked by a sneak attack just now. Ignoring the ant queen blocking him, Jin Zinzi had to wake up the 4 members of the exploration team as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he could not escape, he would not leave any bones left. Jin wanted to avoid the fight, but the queen ant kept chasing her and kept attacking Jin with her forelimbs, without giving Jin any chance to move forward. Jin understands the habits of ants. According to the instinct of animals, some aggressive animals will guard their territory. It is obvious that Jin, the intruder, has become the target of time ants to kill. Facing the time ant in front of him, Jin Ye seemed very embarrassed. He couldn't kill it, hurt it, or hide from it. Even if he chose to break through, the opponent was blocking his path, and the time ant wouldn't be there after breaking through. Without attacking himself, Jin was in a dilemma for a moment. Try that trick. Making up his mind, Jin slowly slowed down. If Lin could see Jin, he would find that Jin's figure was slowly disappearing. This was a kind of footwork similar to limb bending. Jin was preparing to bypass the time ants and approach the exploration team. When he felt that this method was feasible, a huge forelimb suddenly swept toward Jin. Jin hurriedly avoided it and thought secretly, is it the characteristic of the ants, heat induction? After dodging the sweep of the time ants' forelimbs, Jin glanced in the direction of Lin with the corner of his eye, and found that although Lin continued to use his sword light, there were too many reproductive bodies, and he was about to surround Lin. Feeling furious in his heart, Jin secretly said, give it a try. While thinking, Jin raised his hand and fired a few telekinesis bombs, but the target was not the time ants, but the exploration group about 100 meters behind the time ants. Boom! Jin, who once again escaped the attack of time ants, heard the sound and felt that he should be able to release the telekinesis ability of the exploration group. At a glance, Jin saw that the exploration team showed no signs of waking up. All the attacks passed through the exploration team's body and hit the ground. Seeing this situation, Jin's brain turned rapidly, thinking that there was absolutely no possibility of missing the shot with his own technique, so there was only one possibility. Damn it! It turns out to be the life-saving ability of the space system. It seems that the figure of the exploration team is just a projection of space. Now they may have locked themselves in space. Jin thought of a lot in an instant. What troubled him was that although he knew the basic function of the other party's thoughts, he had no suitable solution. Kim, are you okay? Jin, who was dodging the attack of time ants, heard Lin's voice in his ears. Jin knew that Lin was anxious, proving that he could no longer hold on. Lin, can you come over and help me hold down the queen? Jin shouted to Rin while dodging the attack. Lin, who was on the edge of the corpse pit, saw the reproductive bodies gradually surrounding him, and knew that he would be submerged sooner or later if this continued, so he simply allowed these reproductive bodies to spread. Slowly injecting the thought energy into the knife, Lin flicked it along the handle of the knife. The knife lock at the end of the knife handle gradually extended, and the tip of the knife lock pierced near Jin's position. Lin glanced at the gradually spreading ant swarm, and with a full jump, he tightened the knife lock and jumped directly to the platform with Lin. The moment Jin saw Lin jumping over, he said to Lin, "Help me entangle the time ant, don't hurt it, and don't kill it." After Lin stood firm, he immediately took Jin's place, and turned the direction of Wu Sheng in his hand, preparing to use the back of the knife to defend against the attack of the time ants. Seeing that Lin was ready, Jin burst out with all his energy and ran towards the exploration team at the moment when the time ants attacked Lin. Rin took over Jin's position and discovered that this time ant was indeed an S-class designated isolation object. The time ant is very fast, so Lin can only defend it with all his strength. Only when he can't defend it, will he block it with the back of his knife. Clang! Once again, he used the back of his sword to defend himself against the attack of time ants. The powerful force made Lin retreat continuously. From the corner of his eye, he even saw that the ant wave was less than 5 meters away from him. Chapter 46. With both the front and back roads blocked, death is inevitable no matter what. At this moment, Lin knew that he had no way out now, and he wanted to ask Jin if he was okay. But Lin couldn't ask, because he knew that Jin was also trying his best to handle this matter, and he couldn't let Jin be distracted. Even holding on for one more second now was a glimmer of hope for survival. If I can't live, you can't live either. Thinking of this, Lin looked at the four limbs of the time ant swinging towards him, with murderous intent in his eyes. Seemingly sensing Lin's murderous intent, the time ants launched an even more violent attack on Lin. While Lin was trying his best to defend against the attack of time ants, Jin was sitting next to the exploration team, his whole body exuding mind energy, like an old monk in meditation. It's just that although Jin feels like this to others, the sweat streaming down his forehead also proves his urgent mood at this time. There is no news from Jin yet, but the ant tide has arrived behind Lin. The only place not covered by the ant nest is only the area behind the time ants. Finally, the ant tide gradually approached, and each reproductive body rushed towards Lin with its huge mouth parts open. Lin jumped on the spot to avoid the attack of the reproductive body. When he stopped in the air, he saw the oncoming four limbs of the time ant. Damn it! With a flick of Wu Sheng's hand, the sword lock instantly flew out, shattering the ground behind the time ant. At the moment of contraction, Lin's hair brushed against the time ant's forelimbs and he barely managed to escape. Because it was too sudden, the thought injected into the knife lock was not controlled. Lin was pulled to the ground by the knife lock and rolled several times on the ground. There was no time to adjust the state, the time ant's attack continued, and the ant tide behind them also came like a tide. Lin didn't expect that in just 5 minutes from the time he and Jin entered until now, the situation had already reached its current situation. Gritting his teeth, Lin could only retreat while fighting, hoping that Jin could convey some good news in the last moment. Otherwise, Lin didn't know what would happen to Jin, but he would definitely not be able to escape. Hateful. There was no time to think anymore. The constant approach of the ant tide gave Lin a strong sense of oppression. Especially those reproductive bodies that have already supported the time ants among them, Lin did not dare to attack them at will. If the time ant is accidentally injured and the power of time in its body flows out, or other bad things happen, it will be even worse than the current situation. With no other option, Lin could only continue to dodge the attacks of the time ants and kill the approaching reproductive bodies. Around the exploration team, Jin, who has always maintained the appearance of Lao Zeng, is not relaxed. He understands that this space telepathy ability must be released as soon as possible. Jin's idea is very simple. The ability to telepathize with space must pull people or objects around the user of the ability into the created space. Knowing this, it is easy to crack this ability. After all, thought is just a kind of energy, and even space requires energy to maintain. The method Jin is using now is to use his own thought energy to resonate with the ability user's thought energy. As long as the chi of the two parties reach an agreement, although Jin cannot enter the space, it is feasible to let the people inside know and release his telekinesis ability. When Lin and Jin worked together to rescue the exploration team, in a pure white space, the exploration team sat together in the same posture as the outside world. Hila is a cultural relic hunter, and his main job is to restore, excavate, and protect cultural relics. Ever since entering this space called 7 Days Safe House, Hila's mood has not been good. She feels that she may not be able to survive this time, and the past keeps popping up in her mind. Originally, Hila was just a lover of cultural relics. Because he was pursuing the path of protecting cultural relics, he took the hunter exam. Unexpectedly, he passed the exam in the end and was taught the lesson. Kira feels that her telekinesis ability may be due to her lack of security in her personality. Although the space system is very rare, his telekinesis ability is not really strong, so his life-saving ability is a little better. From the moment they enter this space, except for Hila, who can move freely, everyone else can only maintain one posture. There will be a projection outside the space and their thinking will be stagnant. The most important thing is that every minute that passes in this space, Hila will become very tortured, because this ability can only last for 7 days, and if he does not leave after 7 days, he can only stay with this space forever. Turning his head and looking at his teammates, Hila was very upset. He couldn't believe that he must have had a mental disorder to come to such a ruin with unclear information. He also released the time ants sealed by the Lulak clan with the power of the entire clan. 5 days have passed, and the time is coming in 2 days. What should I do? Why hasn't the association sent someone to rescue me? So afraid. Suffering from fear every day, Hila was filled with various emotions, making Hila feel deeply helpless. It's better to stay in this space forever. My teammates will definitely understand me. With this thought in mind, Hila buried her face in her legs, and tears gradually dripped from the gap between her legs to the ground. Suddenly, Hila felt a strange thought energy. She knew very well that this thought energy could not appear in this space. There was only one possibility. The rescuers sent by the association had arrived. Thinking of Hila here, hope instantly ignited in her heart. The association must have sent someone here to remove the telepathy first. With a murmur, Hila wiped her tears, and her telekinesis ability was instantly released. Within the ruins, Lin was already very close to Jin, not because of the pressure of the time ants, but because of the gradual spread of the ant tide. Time ants are obviously a very smart species. When they see the ant tide spreading, they sit in the center of the ant tide, waiting to share the fruits of victory. In Lin's view, although the time ant is an S-class designated isolation object, its attack power is far inferior to that of the chimera ant. However, in terms of weirdness, it can make the chimera ant turn around and run away at the moment of contact. Cleaning up the advancing reproductive bodies, Lin felt that the amount of Nian Qi was running low. Every time he waved the weapon in his hand, it was much slower. A large amount of sweat soaked his clothes, and there was no time for the sweat to slip into his eyes. Go and wipe. Jin's condition is also not good. He resonates with the opponent's mental energy. The consumption on him is not as simple as 1+1, but requires more mental energy to continuously change and constantly match the mental energy of the ability user. Suddenly, Jin opened his eyes. After seeing Lin's figure fighting not far away, he immediately fired countless thought bombs from his hands and shot them towards the ant tide. Seeing the sudden appearance of the teleportation bomb, Lin felt like tears filled his eyes. He didn't know whether it was because of the stimulation of sweat. Chapter 47. Are you sent to the rescue by the Hunter Association? Hila was a little lucky. She didn't expect the association to move so quickly, but when she saw the overwhelming ant tide in front of her, she suddenly panicked. The association sent us here. When will the remaining 3 people wake up? Jin kept firing mind bombs in his hands while answering Hila's questions. They are already awake, but the transfer space has created a sense of chaos and they need to sort it out. Hila was a little nervous. She saw the huge time ants in the distance, and also saw the dense ant tide. She usually only studied cultural relics, but she had never seen such a scene before, and her legs were trembling for a moment. Then why are you still standing there? Why don't you help me quickly? Seeing Hila in this state, Jin shouted angrily and couldn't help feeling a little emotional. It seemed that he was really old, and now anyone can explore the ruins. Okay. Okay. Hila was a little frightened by Jin, and then said at a loss, but I can't. Release the ability. Jin was speechless and simply left Hila aside. Sensing that Lin was not in good condition, he shouted to Lin, get back first, the exploration team is coming out. After hearing this, Lin breathed a sigh of relief, jumped back several times in a hurry, jumped to Jin's side, and wiped the sweat from his face with his hand. After Lin withdrew, the ant tide's advancement speed was obviously much faster, and the speed blocked by Jin's telekinesis bullets was even less effective. Lin, why are you here? Biscay held his head and stood up leisurely, his eyes a little confused. Lin didn't say anything, but pointed at the swarm of ants that were gradually surrounding him, and motioned for Biscay to look at it for himself. Following Lin's finger, Biscay looked over. His eyes widened for a moment, and he was so surprised by the sight in front of him that he was speechless. Hey! You guys should be awake too, right? Why don't you come over and help? Jin's words reached everyone's ears, and the exploration team who had just woken up immediately reacted. I didn't expect that the person sent by the association was Mr. Jin. It seems that he takes our death very seriously. Sats felt a little emotional, but he didn't stop while talking. He used the release system like Jin, releasing mind bombs to kill the approaching ant tide. Bijir, a one-star ancient writing hunter, said hurriedly, now is not the time to talk about this. What should we do now? Run away. Hey! Hey! Didn't you notice something was wrong? Why did that time ant become so big? When Biscay saw the huge scale of the ant colony, his scalp suddenly felt numb, and then an incredible look appeared on his face. Now is not the time to talk about this. We'd better leave here as soon as possible, otherwise we will be in trouble if we are surrounded by ant nests. Jin interrupted Biscay's question, then pointed to the entrance above the corpse pit and said, we have to find a way to get to that location. Seeing that there was a distance of about 300 meters from the top of the corpse pit, several people in the exploration team were thinking about how to get past the dense ant tide. Under the gradual encroachment of the ant tide, except for the place where Lin and his party stayed, the entire space was almost filled by the army of time ants. It would be very irrational to directly force their way in. I have a way, but you must control the ant tide, otherwise the plan will not be implemented. It was Lin who spoke. When he heard Jin pointed out that he wanted to leave through the passage above the corpse pit, he already had an idea. However, in order to complete this idea, he must first control the spread of the ant nest. We don't have time. Let's control the ant tide, right? I'll do it. Jin stopped casting telekinesis bombs and concentrated his telekinesis on his right fist. In an instant, Jin's right fist became gleaming with golden light. Drink! Raising his shining golden right fist, Jin directly hit the platform in front of him. In an instant, all the roads from the entrance to the platform were destroyed by Jin. When Jin's punch fell, Lin was not idle. He woke up the sleeping Xiaobai, directly entered the dragon pattern possession state, and turned on the burst mode. This was Lin's trump card, which he had never used before. On the one hand, he was afraid of losing his strength if he delayed for too long. On the other hand, if the rescue plan fails, it is better to use this method to escape. After all, if the crisis comes, Jin will definitely give the highest priority to passing on information. The powerful life essence burst out, causing the little thought energy left in Lin's body to boil. At this moment, Lin felt full of power. Go with! With a flick of the long knife in his hand, the hook at the tail quickly extended and flew towards the exit above the corpse pit. Ding! When the knife lock was hung on the stone wall above the exit and he saw that Jin had temporarily restrained the ant tide's offensive, Lin stuck Wu Sheng on the ground and yelled, quick! Let's go! Rin shouted, stepped on the chain and ran towards the exit. The remaining people, seeing the rope bridge made by Lin, also stepped on the chains and fled quickly behind Lin. This behavior of Lin and Jin seemed to anger the time ants. They instantly jumped up from the bottom of the platform and rushed towards Lin and his party. Unfortunately, the time ant's size does not allow it to step onto Lin's chain, so it can only keep attacking the chain. It's a pity that Lin's sword lock is very hard, and the time ant's attack can only make the chain shake continuously. The people on the chains landed on the ground. Rin pulled out the chains inserted into the wall and took back Wu Sheng stuck on the ground. Hey! I finally escaped. Thank you so much, Lin. As Biscay spoke, she patted her chest, looking scared, but she might have forgotten that she was now in a state of releasing the seal. An elderly King Kong Barbie made a gesture of slapping her chest in front of her, and Lin said that he didn't dare to look at it. How should we deal with that ant down there? Or should we wait for the support of the Hunter Association? Ignoring Biscay, Lin asked the key question. This question was actually asked by Lin to Jin. After all, only this person could take the lead. Jin lowered his head and thought for a moment, then said with a helpless expression, although it is not my original intention to destroy the ruins, for the sake of the I-Chen continent, I can only eliminate the hidden dangers here. Lin thought what Jin said was fine, but destroying the time ants would detonate the power of time in its body, and it was impossible to know the scope of that energy. If the scope of the spread is the entire ruins, then the few people who managed to escape here will only be buried with the time ants. When Lin was thinking about how to eliminate the time ants, Jin patted Lin on the shoulder and pointed downwards with his finger. As Lin looked around, he saw that a large number of reproductive bodies had begun to accumulate below. It was obvious that the time ants were preparing to use the human sea tactic to build a ladder. Look, if we can't destroy it, it will come out to hunt us down. Even if we escape, we are just leading the way for it. What Jin said caused everyone present to be silent for a while, not because they felt sorry for destroying the ruins, but because they didn't know how to kill the time ants. Chapter 48. The reproductive bodies below the corpse pit continued to surge, and everyone was constantly thinking about ways to eliminate the time ants. Jin calmly analyzed, I don't know why. This time ant doesn't seem to be as strong as I thought. Its attack power is average, but the defensive power of its carapace is very strong. It is difficult to break through its defense with ordinary methods. What? Suddenly, Bisji seemed to have thought of something and shouted, instantly attracting the attention of several people. With everyone staring at Bisji, he hurriedly said, I just realized something was wrong. The time ant was hatched instantly after we opened the box. It was only about 5 days old. 5 days. Hearing this, Jin and Lin showed incredible expressions instantly. Lin never expected that the time ants he and Jin were fighting against were only larvae that were only 5 days old. That's right, when it first hatched, it was obviously very small, but the moment it hatched, a large number of reproductive bodies sprang out of it, and we couldn't defeat it at all. Sats also spoke in detail based on what happened at the time. It's all our fault for being greedy and underestimating this kind of creature. We could deal with it at first, but who knew it would multiply more and more, and in the end we wouldn't be able to escape. Bijal was a little embarrassed, but her eyes kept looking at Bisji, as if she was hinting at something. Bisji was obviously a little embarrassed. Of course she knew what Bijal was referring to. She was indeed greedy at the time and underestimated the ability of Time Ant. Now that things have developed to this extent, she does not want to see it. Guys, are you sure you won't care about the ants below and discuss it here? Sats pointed with his finger at the rising reproductive bodies below and looked at everyone with a very embarrassed expression. Jin glanced at Sats, used his release ability, and fired 2 balls of light from his hands, hitting the center of the ant colony. The teleportation bomb passed through the thick ant tide, and when it was about to reach the middle position, Jin detonated the teleportation bomb instantly. As a result, the surrounding propagules were instantly blown away by the impact of the explosion, and the height of the ladder composed of propagules was reduced by more than half in an instant. Seeing this situation, Sats took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat from his forehead, and complimented, Mr. Jin, you are truly worthy of being a legendary relic hunter. If the stone door could be closed, we could wait for the Hunter Association's support. Unfortunately, once the stone door is closed, the ruins will collapse. Just after Lin finished speaking, Hila said hurriedly, then why don't we just destroy the ruins? Let the time ants be buried underground forever. For a moment, everyone looked at Hila like a fool. For a moment, Hila was a little confused, but she was sure that this was definitely not a good idea, so she lowered her head in embarrassment. Alas! We not only have to escape, but we also have to get rid of the threat of time ants. If the ruins are destroyed, we can't be sure whether the time ants are dead. If the time ants escape, it will be an unimaginable disaster for the human world. Rin sighed and explained the difficulty. After listening to Lin's words, Hila instantly understood how childish the idea just now was, and her face couldn't help but blush. Jin glanced at the rising ant tide, raised his hand and fired 2 more teleportation bombs, and then pointed at the time ants standing behind the ant tide in the distance. You see, this guy is the type that cannot be let go at will. Caution is the nature of all natural creatures. If you are not sure whether it is dead, then it is a time bomb. Lin thought for a while and said, I have a way to kill it, but how to deal with the time field that broke out after his death? If it is affected, we will also be buried with him. So the difficulty lies here. The ability of the time system is the most unsolvable. Jin helplessly spread his hands, indicating that there was nothing he could do. Everyone who was thinking fell into silence for a short time. Only Jin fired 2 telekinesis bombs from time to time to hinder the progress of the ant tide. Suddenly, Jin rubbed his chin and said, "You said that this time ant was just born, and it has bred so many propagules. How much time power is left in its body?" Hearing Jin's words, Lin's eyes flashed with light, and he immediately echoed, looking at its cautious appearance, "I guess the time ant is at the end of its strength now, otherwise how could it not continue to divide?" Snapped. Biscay clapped his hands and said excitedly, "That must be the case. As long as we kill from a distance and run quickly, it will definitely be no problem." Everyone thought for a while, nodded to each other, and then after some discussion, finally decided on a feasible plan. Rin stood at the exit with Wu Sheng in hand, looking at the time ants standing behind the ant tide and said, "Then leave it to me. Remember that we have to escape as soon as possible and don't do unnecessary things." Several people behind Lin nodded, ready to run away at any time. Having made his mind clear, Lin mobilized all his thoughts and energy, empowering him with the essence of life. In an instant, his body was wrapped in a thick layer of thoughts. The time ant in the distance clearly felt the danger coming, and acted in a panic, but it didn't know where this feeling of danger came from. As Lin's mental energy continued to condense, his aura also increased, and the time ants in the distance immediately noticed Lin. "Kill him, threat! A powerful threat, this human must be killed." This was the information that emerged instinctively in the mind of Time Ant. At this moment, Time Ant even had the idea of dying together with Rin. "Go ahead, Miss Cookie." Bisji's whole body was flashing with purple thought energy, and Miss Cookie appeared in everyone's eyes. Miss Cookie's cognition was the same as Bisji's, and she jumped onto the golden fist the moment she came out. "Drink!" As Jin let out a low roar, Miss Cookie bent her legs to gather strength, and with Jin's powerful strength, she rushed straight towards the time ant. Slim massage. With the help of Jin's powerful acceleration, Miss Cookie crashed into the time ant in the blink of an eye. Before Miss Cookie dissipated, her fingers danced continuously, and the purple thought energy seeped into the interior of the time ant along its carapace. The time ant only felt a sense of relief, but could not muster any strength. It was as if the whole body was like mud, paralyzed because there was no point of support. Focusing his thoughts on Wu Sheng, Lin swung the sword with all his strength. This sword is the most powerful one that Lin has wielded since he came to the hunter world. Although it takes into account the endurance limit of his body, it is undoubtedly his strongest blow so far. The huge sword light slashed out, and Lin's aura fell to the bottom. Xiao Bai seemed to have exhausted too much, and returned to the prison and fell into a deep sleep. The huge sword light slashed at the time ant at an extremely fast speed. However, the time ant had been controlled by Miss Cookie's paralysis massage and could only watch the sword light slashing towards him with fear. Chapter 49. Boom! The huge sword slashed down and ploughed huge ravines on the ground. As for where the time ant was, it was already wrapped in thick smoke. What a powerful blow! Lin, you have so many tricks up your sleeve. By the way, what type are you from? Hearing Jin's voice, Lin suddenly felt something bad and thought to himself, is this guy so sharp? He's starting to pay attention to me. I was afraid of being put in danger by some unscrupulous bastard, so I hid my cards a little more. Lin knew that his performance aroused Jin's curiosity, but there were some things that couldn't be said. Who doesn't have some secrets? It's just more or less, so I avoided in this way of ridicule. Hearing this, Jin Mingming's question was a bit out of bounds. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said awkwardly, I'm just curious. I will give you more advice in the future. Hey! Lin is very powerful. He is almost the most talented disciple of Shinzen Ryu. Biscay was a little proud, wishing that all mankind would know that this beautiful jade belonged to Shinzen Ryu. By the way, how did you enter the ruins? I remember that after Biscay opened the dam box, the Lulak clan's backup force sealed the ruins. Bijir was a little confused. Although it was not the right time to ask such questions in this situation, she really couldn't help it due to her outspoken nature. That's what you're talking about. I know that Lin is the association's exclusive mind-killing master, and it must have been the mind-killing master who came in. Biscay looked even more proud, and several people in the exploration team widened their eyes in disbelief. Feeling that he had become Biscay's bragging rights, Lin rolled his eyes at Biscay and said helplessly, shouldn't you be concerned about the situation of the time ants? Don't worry. Biscay said with great confidence, pointing to the reproductive bodies below, seeing that these reproductive bodies are no longer moving, it seems that the time ants are dead. None of them replied to Biscay. They were just relieved to see the condition of the propagules, but they were still wary of the time ants in the smoke. The smoke and dust slowly dissipated, and the environment of the scene was reflected in front of everyone's eyes. A huge slash was made in the space by Lean's knife, which spread directly to the back of the mountain. The time ant in the center of the slash mark has been split in half by Lean's sword light, and it seems that it cannot die anymore. Seeing this situation, everyone's tense mood completely relaxed, and they could finally say goodbye to this ruins. Look! The time ants are completely dead. I can look for gems with peace of mind. Biscay looked at the dead time ants happily, not feeling the strange gazes around him at all. Seeing that Biscay was getting carried away, Lean warned, "It's okay for you to find gems, Biscay, but don't let such a dangerous thing happen again next time. Don't worry. It's not certain whether there will be a second time ant in the human world." Biscay was a little nonchalant, and Lean also knew that Biscay was a kind of self-confidence. After all, with her strength, she was considered a strong person in Lake Mobius. With a helpless smile, Lean asked everyone about their plans. Are you going to continue exploring or are you going to return to the stronghold? Jin has informed the president of the situation here before. It is estimated that the president will arrive in a few days. Don't think about it. The damage to this ruins is too serious. We must return to the stronghold as soon as possible. Amid everyone's questions, Jin pointed to the damaged area in the ruins and said, I just observed that Lean destroyed the structure of the ruins, and it may collapse at any time. If you want to continue exploring, professionals must stabilize the structure of the ruins. Everyone nodded. In fact, except for Biscay who wanted to find gems because he failed to achieve his goal, everyone else had long wanted to leave this place. Especially when Hila heard that Biscay would continue to search for gems, she was so anxious that she almost shed tears. Let's leave quickly. President Netero will handle the rest. I really don't want to come to this place a second time. With that said, Lean began to urge everyone to leave here, and only Biscay walked at the end with some reluctance. Just as everyone walked a short distance away, a burst of wind suddenly came from behind several people. Everyone looked back and saw a red gem flying rapidly in the direction of everyone. Is this a gift from the ruins? Seeing the gem flying over, Biscay's eyes lit up and he was about to reach out to catch it. Jin on the side felt a hint of danger from the flying gems, so he raised his hand and fired a teleportation bullet without thinking. In the eyes of everyone, the thought bullet hit the flying gem, but although the gem was hit, it did not stop, nor was it broken as expected, but the surface was full of cracks. Ka! Ka! The flying gems continued to shatter, and arrived near Biscay in the blink of an eye. Not good. Everyone present felt a thump in their hearts, and they all realized something was wrong and kept retreating. Crack! Crack! Finally, the gem shattered in the air, and in the eyes of everyone, a flaming red insect quickly rushed out and headed straight for Biscay, who was closest to it. Careful! Reen shouted subconsciously, and his body reacted instinctively. He slashed out with the Wuxian knife in one hand, grabbed Biscay's clothes with the other hand, and threw it directly behind him. He slashed the fiery red insect directly with his backhand, and instantly the insect was cut in half. Even in Lean's eyes, the silvery white blood splashed out after the insect was chopped was clearly visible and slowly dripping down. Drawing the knife was Lean's subconscious reaction. After drawing the knife, Lean began to regret it. At this moment, in Lean's eyes, time seemed to slow down a lot. It turns out that the gem on the time ant's head is its true form. What a cunning guy! This was Lean's only thought, and then he felt that the time around him was extremely slow, as if he was stuck in the mud, and even felt like he was falling infinitely, and an unbearable dizziness appeared in his mind. No, I can't fall here and die with this ant. My life is not like this. Although everything was dark in front of him, Lean could clearly feel that his body was trying his best to move, but he still couldn't move even half an inch. When Lean cut off the fiery red bug, the remaining people saw that the silver blood quickly dissipated in the air, forming a time field of about 2 meters around it, and Lean was wrapped in it. When Jin saw this situation, he was so smart that he didn't know that this was the true form of the time ant. He hurriedly took off the windproof belt wrapped around his head, injected his mind energy and rolled it towards Lean. Snapped! Seeing that the windproof belt successfully caught Lean, Jin immediately pulled Lean back, but the pulling process became slower and slower. Come out! Jin roared, the mental energy in his body exploded, and he pulled hard with both hands. Reen's figure continued to retreat, and finally left the field. Call. Jin looked at the unconscious Lin, exhaled heavily, and said thankfully, fortunately, the time realm has not yet been formed, otherwise what I pull out will be a withered skeleton that has been dead for who knows how many years. Afterwards, Jin wrapped Lin with a windproof belt, carried him on his back and said, we must leave here as soon as possible and wait to meet the president. Chapter 50. Hunter Calendar December 1998. Ichen Continent, Urkel City. In the endless darkness, a figure was crawling slowly, but judging from his eyes, there was only numbness reflected in the gradual mental breakdown. He didn't know how long he had been crawling here. All he knew was that his body had no strength at all, and he was squeezing his own strength every moment to move his body forward a small distance. Lin didn't know how much time had passed in this space. Maybe time had no meaning to him now. Under the dual mental and physical torture, he gradually stopped moving and seemed to be silent forever. Ah! In the private hospital in the center of York, a loud scream broke the silence in the room. At this time, Lin's eyes widened, he was breathing heavily, and stared blankly at the ceiling above his head. The doctor in charge of the floor heard Lin's shout and immediately ran over to check the situation here. Mr. Lin, you finally woke up. You have been in a coma for nearly 3 months. The doctor who came over observed Lin's condition and sounded a little lucky. Hearing that he had been in a coma for nearly 3 months, Lin couldn't help but wonder what was going on with Jin and others after he was in coma. Lin was about to speak, but found that he couldn't make any sound. It felt like he was about to say something, but it was stuck in his throat. He pointed at his throat to the doctor and asked himself what was going on. The doctor understood what Lin meant and asked the nurse next to him to bring over a mirror. Not long after, 2 nurses walked into the ward carrying a full-length mirror. After putting down the mirror, the doctor waved the nurse to leave. He looked at Lin and introduced, Mr. Lin, I am a professional hunter. You can call me Barrow. Now let me tell you what happened during your coma. Lin didn't say anything and listened quietly to Barrow's story. After Barrow's explanation, Lin learned that since he was sent to the hospital, his body had been changing every day, and no instrument could show any results. After Barrow's observation and guessing, he found that this was just the normal growth of the human body, but the growth was too rapid. In desperation, he could only let Lin continue to observe in the ward. Growing. Lin muttered silently in his mind and pointed at the mirror, indicating that he wanted to see what changes had taken place in him. Barrow smiled slightly, took the full-length mirror over, and stood in front of Lin's hospital bed. At this moment, Lin was simply stunned, and even couldn't believe his eyes. In front of him, a young man with long silver hair, delicate and straight features, and an air of youth turned out to be himself. Raising his hands, Lin stared at his hands, the slender fingers, and the white and tender skin, feeling a little lost for a moment. You can't speak yet. It may be because your vocal cords have changed and it will take some time to adapt. Barrow looked at Lin, who looked shocked. In fact, he was also shocked. After more than 20 years of medical experience, this was the first time Barrow had seen this kind of situation. However, when he thought about the many strange things happening in the circle, he felt relieved for a moment. By the way, Mr. Jin left something for you and asked me to hand it over to you when you wake up. With that, Barrow left the room, leaving only Reen alone. Looking at himself in the mirror, Lin had a strange feeling. He knew that this was the time domain of the time ants having an effect on him. This effect must have caused him to lose part of his life, causing the effect of forced growth. That's why Jin said that this kind of damage is irreversible. With a sigh in his heart, Lin began to feel the condition of his body. In his perception, although his body is a little weak, it is still in the recovery stage and should be fully recovered after a while. While Lin was still thinking about some other issues, Barrow opened the door and walked in with a box in his hand. Putting the box on Lin's bedside, Barrow reminded, "This is what Mr. Jin left for you. As for how to use it, I think you should know." After Barrow finished speaking, he said, "Have a good rest," and left the ward. Lin looked at the box on the bedside and knew without thinking that it must be a divine item that could be opened with just a thought. And Jin temporarily handed this item to Barrow for safekeeping, which proved that the doctor must be a trustworthy person. Without hesitation, Lin picked up the box and injected mind energy into the box. As the mind energy continued to be injected, the seal on the box was slowly unlocked. Opening the box, Lin found that Jin had left two things for himself. A letter and a notebook. Picking up the letter, Lin tore open the envelope, took out the paper inside and read it. After reading, Lin understood some things that happened after he fell into coma, as well as the whereabouts of Biscay and others. Regarding the issue of the ruins, Jin expressed it simply in his letter. After their group left, they waited at the stronghold for about a day before the association's airship arrived. The president almost went out with the remaining 12 earthly branches to observe and explore the ruins and surrounding areas. After finding that there were no problems, Jin took over the task of the exploration team and thoroughly explored the ruins. Several members of the exploration team, because they caused some damage to the ruins, were brought back to the association for protection by the president to prevent the local government from demanding compensation for various losses. After all, Biscay is a kind-hearted person, and Nitro can still afford to protect him, but the gains and losses of the ruins are equivalent to wasted. The rest is about Jin and some discoveries made about exploring the ruins of Luluk. After reading it, Lin also thought that the Lulu tribe was really unlucky. Their clan leader had such a whim that he wanted to use the Time Ant's ability to swallow time to gain eternal life for himself. Unfortunately, when you are staring into the abyss is also staring into you. This idea obviously failed. As a result, facing the desperate counterattack of the Time Ants, the Luluk clan almost used the entire clan's strength. But Time Ants are not so easy to kill, and in the end the two parties started a life and death showdown. It was obvious that the Time Ants underestimated the determination of human beings, and the entire Lulu family was killed and injured. Although the Time Ants survived by transforming into cocoons, they returned to the starting point of their lives. The remaining Luluk tribe tried various methods to eliminate the Time Ants, but all ended in failure. As a last resort, the Time Ant's cocoon can only be sealed in a box and placed on the delusional patriarch, preparing to bury the secret. It's a pity that they didn't expect that the Luluk tribe, which had no power, was not preserved at all in that era. Unexpectedly, 1,000 years later, there will be a King Kong Barbie named Bisji, who will break the seal of the Time Ants. Chapter 51. In Lin's opinion, the deeds of the Luluk clan are undoubtedly stupid. At the same time, after this incident, he understood more clearly that he should not take it lightly no matter what the circumstances. I was lucky enough to survive this time. What about next time? The experiences and lessons of our predecessors are the crystallization of blood and tears, and they must be summed up and turned into life experience. Just like Jin's performance in the ruins, only with profound knowledge, strong strength and shrewd mind can he be worthy of the title of one of the 5 great telepathic abilities in the human world. Lin secretly made up his mind that if the same situation happens next time, he will never let himself feel passive because of ignorance. Putting down the letter in his hand, Lin picked up the notebook left by Jin. The specific content recorded in this notebook was clearly stated by Jin in his letter. It was the method of learning divine words and Jin's own summary. Although Jin Xin said that he has been busy recently and asked Lin to learn the divine words by himself. But Lin knew clearly that divine writing was a profound knowledge, and how could it be learned by just reading notes? Lin secretly guessed that given Jin's fear of trouble, this was an excuse to run away when Lin was unconscious. What an irresponsible guy! After secretly complaining about Jin, Lin opened the notebook and read the text above, and was completely attracted by the content. As Lin flipped through the pages, Lin's frown deepened and he finally closed the notebook. After lowering his head and meditating for a while, Lin's understanding of the divine word no longer stayed on the surface, but saw a deeper level. As for Jin, he is indeed a master-level figure in the study of divine characters. The things he writes range from simple to profound, and the meaning he wants to express is easy to understand. Lin summarized what a divine word is. A divine word is a word that uses specific words to trigger a special structure within the words through the energy of thought, thereby exerting incredible effects. This is why it is called a divine word. In Lin's opinion, divine writing can be classified as a writing discipline in terms of culture, and it can also be regarded as a combat system in terms of combat. Each divine word is composed of a special structure. Use mind energy to stabilize the structure and use mental power to depict it, ultimately forming a virtuous cycle. Summarizing the application of divine characters, Lin felt that divine characters were like formations in the fantasy world, using different forms to achieve the same effect. As for the divine words that can produce effects, the notes were so densely packed that Lin felt dizzy. And he knew very well that if he forced himself to study with his current physical condition, he would not get good learning results and would easily delay his body's recovery. Suppressing his restless heart, Lin secretly decided that after recovering his body, he must study hard and try to learn the divine words before going to the Dark Continent. After making up his mind, Lin's heart seemed to drift to that mysterious area along with these divine words. There is an ancient city there, a herb that can cure all diseases, and an ancient humanoid weapon called gold and silver ingots. The most important thing is that there is a lost history there. Shaking his head, Lin got rid of those unrealistic fantasies and lay on the bed to recuperate. A week later, Rin was finally able to walk normally. However, his vocal cords may be fragile and he is still unable to speak. When communicating with Basso, Lin always used sign language, which led to his rapid improvement in sign language. Lin locked the door in the ward and appeared in the prison with a thought. After entering the prison, Lin glanced at Xiaobai flying in the air. At this time, Xiaobai might have digested the huge after-death thoughts in the ruins due to the relationship between the space field. After waving, Lin motioned Xiaobai to come over. Xiaobai said surge, and flew in front of Lin. After looking at Xiaobai's body shape, Lin was sure that Xiaobai had grown a lot, and it was visible to the naked eye. Sure enough, Xiaobai can grow according to the devouring mind. After analyzing it secretly, Lin waved his hand to Xiaobai to play by himself, and then opened the properties panel in the prison. Warden, Ryan Purst. Age, 18 years old. Prison level, level 3. Prison skills, Eye of Judgment, Prison Controller, Infinite Body, Prison Marshal without pardon. Prison facilities, Warden's Room, Jail, Storage Room, Interrogation Room. Lifespan, 77 years. Sin value, 296 points. Next stage, Sin points. At first glance, as Lin expected, his lifespan has been reduced by 5 years, and his physical age has reached 18 years old. Ugh! With a sigh, Lin turned off the data panel and prepared to check on the prisoner's condition. Lin first came to the front of Shadazuo and the other 3 people. The 3 of them were still half dead, no longer exuding life essence, and they were just barely able to breathe. Then Lin looked at the 3 people he had taken away from Pyokin's prison. Sure enough, as Lin thought, the 3 of them fell into an illusion, with traces of life essence exuding from their bodies, which seemed to last for a long time. Nodding with satisfaction, Lin returned to the hospital room and once again took out the notes left by Jin, with a smile on his face. Putting the notes on the bed, Rin took out a large box from under the hospital bed. These are the items that Barrow had helped prepare before. Inside are some wooden blocks and carving knives, which are consumables that Lin prepared for the practice of divine characters. Opening the notebook, Lin held the wooden block in his left hand and the carving knife in his right hand, and started carving according to the contents in the notebook. Before traveling through time, Lin benefited from the teachings of his grandfather's old friend, who was a state banquet chef. He was already proficient in the art of carving, but this was his first time trying the technique of injecting mental energy. With the injection of Lin, a node in the internal structure of the divine word was excessive, causing the divine word to be destroyed instantly, and a trace of white smoke floated on the wooden block. However, Lin was not discouraged. After this failure, Lin felt that his mental power was very strong, about 10 times that of the average person's mental power described in the notebook. The benefits of strong mental power are self-evident, and they can play a great assisting role when engraving divine words and injecting telekinesis. Of course, the most important thing is to be able to communicate with the divine characters and trigger resonance with the divine characters. In this way, controlling some divine characters from a distance is very helpful in combat. After thinking about it secretly, Lin felt that maybe because he was a time traveler, he took a big advantage. In fact, what Lin didn't know was that crawling in that endless darkness was Lin's biggest opportunity after traveling beyond prison. Picking up the wooden block again, Lin began to carve it meticulously, slowly injecting his mind energy into the carving process. Gradually, there were more and more failed products around him, and the accuracy of his telekinesis became more and more profound, and his understanding of the divine characters also increased. Chapter 52. The wood chips fell down along with Lin's carving knife. Lin's expression was extremely focused, as if there were only wood blocks and carving knife in front of him in the world. Call. As the last blow ended, Lin let out a heavy breath and looked at the wooden block in his hand with joy. At this moment, as Lin poured in his mental power, a trace of green smoke rose from the wooden block and became thicker and thicker. Seeing the effect of the divine word, Lin couldn't help but show a proud smile. Looking at the divine word representing fire, he became more and more satisfied. Placing the wooden block on the ground, Lin stood up and dusted off the sawdust on his body, picked up the water glass next to the table and extinguished the flames on the wooden block. Having had a successful experience, Lin felt that what Jin said at the time was absolutely right. It would take 5 years at the fastest for a new employee to get started. This was a modest statement made by Jin. Although Lin was able to write the first divine word very quickly, his unique conditions were not available to ordinary people. Exquisite carving skills, strong mental power and control of thoughts are all indispensable. This is also due to the experience in his previous life, otherwise Lin would have to wait for an unknown amount of time to learn the divine word. However, this kind of writing, which has extremely high basic requirements, turned out to be a universal writing on that continent. One can imagine how talented the people in the Dark Continent were at that time. With endless yearning, Lin continued to carve the second divine word. Having already had successful experience, it is not difficult to carve a second divine character, and the divine characters also have something in common. Jin's notebook also explains that as long as you learn 189 basic characters, the rest is not difficult. Lin, who carved the second divine character, also understood what Jin meant when he said it was not difficult. It was expressed in 4 words that it was just familiar. After more than 20 failures, the second divine word was also engraved by Lin. Lin activated the divine characters on the wooden block and scratched the wooden block with a carving knife. No trace appeared on the wooden block. Then he poured his mind energy into it, and then drew a mark on the wooden block. This is the divine word representing firmness. Looking at the divine characters with different functions in his hands, Lin became very playful. When he was about to continue inscribing, he suddenly felt dizzy. Did you consume too much mental energy? Looking at the debris on the ground, the failed products with wrong inscriptions around them, and the few pieces of wood left in the wooden box, a wry smile appeared on the corner of Lin's mouth. No wonder Jinsei needs rest to recover in the ruins. It turns out that the divine words consume so much. After sensing his own condition, Lin made a comparison with Jin. While sighing that the divine words consumed a lot of mental power, he also found that his mental power seemed to be stronger than Jin's. After simply tidying up the room, Lin lay on the bed, preparing to use the period of recovery to calm down. After making up his mind, Lin decided to read various books while practicing the divine calligraphy. No matter what kind of book, as long as it is useful to him, he should read it to increase his knowledge. Lying on the bed, Lin gradually fell asleep. Maybe it was because of the large amount of mental energy consumed. This sleep was extremely sweet. 2 months later, York City Center Hospital. Mr. Lin, there is no problem with your vocal cords at all. As for the fact that you are still unable to make sounds, it is probably because your vocal cords are still adapting. Reen was lying on the treatment chair, listening to Basso's examination results. At present, Mr. Lin can definitely be discharged from the hospital, and there is no need to worry about the problem of his vocal cords. After hearing the treatment results given by Bazuo, Lin nodded and made signs in sign language. Basso saw Lin's sign language and said with certainty, "It's ready to be discharged." Lin smiled slightly and gestured 2 words to Basso with his mouth. As a doctor, Basso naturally understands lip reading and knows that what Lin said is thank you. "You're welcome, Mr. Lin, I hope I won't meet you as a doctor next time." Bazuo teased, and both of them laughed. Standing up from the chair, Lin waved to Basso as a farewell and left the hospital simply. Reen brought nothing with him when he checked in before. Now he only has the clothes on his body and a badly worn carving knife in the storage room. In 2 months, apart from reading the books taken out from the Haka family, he also learned how to carve divine characters. So far, Lin has been able to carve 72 basic divine characters. If Jin knew about this, he would definitely call Lin a monster. Lin was looking forward to Jin's expression. During this period, Biscay and other members of the exploration team called Lin. But because of his vocal cord problem, Lin always hung up the phone after connecting and sent text messages to explain his situation. Lin's request to come to York City to visit Lin was firmly rejected by Lin, and he typed that he was fine now. The only thing that made Lin regretful was that there was no news about Jin. He seemed to be hiding out of fear of trouble. Looking up at the sunlight shining down from the sun, Lin narrowed his eyes slightly and couldn't help but secretly thought, "It feels so good to see the sunlight." After taking a look at the surrounding environment, Lin was going to buy some suitable clothes and then continue his previous journey. Although Reen cannot speak due to his vocal cords, throwing money away after choosing clothes can often solve many problems. At this stage of Lin's life, he fully understands that in the human continent, problems that can be solved with money are no longer difficult for him. After changing into a new set of clothes and putting the rest into the storage room, Lin took out his cell phone and sent a message to the bean-faced man from the Hunter Association. Previously, Nitro asked Lin to go to the ruins. Although it was in the name of saving Biscay, Lin knew that the Hunter Association owed him a big favor, which also included a free reading. The message sent to the Bean Noodles this time is that he is going to Tomi's Forest in the NGL Autonomous Country. It is hoped that the association can act as a guarantee in an official capacity to ensure that he can enter the country smoothly, and at the same time obtain permission from the NGL royal family to gain access to Tomi's Forest. This request is not difficult for the Hunter Association, but it is a very energy-consuming thing for Lin. Not only did you have to go through strict security checks to enter the NGL Autonomous Country, you also had to find a way to get permission from the royal family and pay a large deposit. Thinking about it, Lin found it troublesome. Lin had never thought of going through the association channel before, and planned to find a way to get it done after arriving in the NGL Autonomous Country. After all, Lin had just joined the Hunter Association at that time, and there was no basis for cooperation between the two parties. But the situation is different now. After 2 cooperations with the association, the Hunter Association owes Rin a considerable favor, and this favor will only accumulate for him. After sending the message to the bean-faced man, Lin looked at the time and said to himself, "It's lunch time." Chapter 53. Walking on the road of the commercial street, Lin's slender figure, delicate face, and long silver-white hair exuded a confident temperament, which directly attracted the charm of the opposite sex, attracting frequent glances from the opposite sex around him. It wasn't until a long-haired beauty came forward to ask for her contact information that Lin pointed and opened her mouth that the situation subsided slightly. Of course, with Lin's hearing, it was not difficult to hear some regrettable words around him, but it was not that Lin was really unable to speak, and he was too lazy to explain. Arriving at the most exclusive restaurant in York City, Lin looked at the menu in his hand and frowned, attracting the attention of the waiter in charge of ordering. "Sir, are you dissatisfied with anything?" The waiter asked carefully while observing Lin's expression. Knowing that the waiter might have misunderstood, Lin shook his head, picked up the menu and ordered the selected dishes to the waiter. The waiter also knew his duty very well. He silently wrote down the dishes and turned around to inform the kitchen to prepare the ingredients. Sure enough, B-grade ingredients are already the limit that can be purchased on the market. Sighing secretly, Lin put his cell phone on the dining table, waiting for the food to be served and a call from the Hunter Association. Diddy dip. Seeing the phone ringing, Lin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said to himself, "The bean-faced man is indeed the secretary of the association. The matter will be settled in just a moment." After answering the call, Lin tapped the phone twice with his hand. "Make a knock." Knock sound to indicate that he is answering. The bean-faced man on the other side of the phone naturally knew that it was not convenient for Lin to answer the phone, but the report had to be told, otherwise many details would not be clear at all. Mr. Lin, the matter of the NGL Autonomous Country has been taken care of. In addition, this time the association will communicate with the royal family of the NGL Autonomous Country. You will enter Tomi Forest for the purpose of investigating the forest ecology. The royal family will assign a dedicated person to take you in. The contact information of the person in charge of the royal family has been sent to you. You can contact him directly at the border checkpoint of the NGL Autonomous Country. Your identity information has been modified according to your request, and the identity certificate can be used normally. Damian Man spoke in detail, and Lin couldn't help but admire Damian Man's ability to do things. He was worthy of having worked in the Hunter Association for so many years and was deeply trusted by all professional hunters in the association. After the bean-faced man finished speaking, Lin hung up the phone, opened the message function on his mobile phone, glanced at the phone number sent by the bean-faced man, and replied received. Suddenly, Lin had an idea. He remembered that when he played in the Sky Arena, he used the name Lin Sparrow. Now that his identity has returned to its original state, and his appearance has changed drastically, can he get some money from the Sky Arena before fighting Hisoka again? After all, no one can have too much money. After thinking about it for a while at the dinner table, Lin felt more and more that this idea was feasible. And trusting Ford with the financial operations would definitely make a lot of money. Putting this thought aside, one after another expensive dishes were already being served. although these ingredients have no effect on the infinite body. But during his stay in the hospital, Lin's meals were mainly light, and the food in his mouth had long faded away. This did not prevent him from enjoying a delicious meal. After finishing eating, Lin reached out to call the waiter, took out 2 stacks of ring nimbus and placed them in the other's hands, and left the restaurant directly. The waiter who got the money naturally understood what Lin meant. The extra money was his tip. He looked at Lin's leaving figure and murmured, "What a rich and wealthy guest." After leaving the restaurant, Rin went directly to the airship airport. After a burst of sign language gestures, he successfully boarded the airship to the Mitna Federation. This airship goes directly to the Mitre Federation. After arriving, it can be transferred to the NGL Autonomous Country, which takes a total of 9 days. Lin was not idle during the journey. He was reading and practicing divine words at the same time. His life was not boring. This time, unlike the previous 2 times, Lin encountered an unexpected incident and reached the border of the NGL Autonomous Country unimpeded. But what surprised Lin was that the airship ticket to the NGL Autonomous Country was horribly expensive, and there was only 1 passenger on the airship. After thinking about it carefully, Lin felt relieved. A country that couldn't be entered even with a needle on his body would only allow a devil to go there if he didn't have something urgent to do. Rin, who arrived at the border of the NGL Autonomous Country, got off the airship and immediately sent a message to the person in charge dispatched by the royal family. Soon, Lin received a reply, telling him to wait where he was. After taking a look at the surrounding environment, Lin understood why the other party was not afraid of finding the wrong person, because he was the only one at the entire airport exit. After waiting there for a while, a gentleman in a light yellow suit walked over quickly. "Hello. Mr. Lin, I have kept you waiting for a long time. I am the person in charge sent by the royal family to pick you up, Mor Sereno." Mor looked straight at Lin, with a friendly smile on his lips, and stretched out his right hand in front of Lin. Looking at Mor in front of him, Lin nodded and stretched out his hand to shake hands. "Mr. Lin, we need to follow the normal process to enter NGL, and then I will take you to the outskirts of Tommy's forest." Mor explained the next process and signaled to Lin not to worry. Lin nodded and followed Mor. During the inspection, Lin couldn't help but sigh that NGL's inspection method was really abnormally strict. The result of the inspection was as Lin expected. After all of Lin's things were stored in the prison's storage room and he did not take them with him. After leaving the airship airport, Rin followed Mor into a car. "Mr. Lin, let's set off now. It will take about 2 hours to travel, and we will transfer to a ship to take the waterway. After that, it will take about 6 hours to reach Tommy's forest." While driving, Mor explained the time required for the journey to Lin. There was no conversation all the way. It was not until the transfer that Lin felt that NGL valued the Hunter Association. Unexpectedly, a passenger ship was sent to pick him up. Seeing the surprise in Lin's eyes, Mor smiled slightly and said, "Although our country has not joined V5, it has a close relationship with the Hunters Association, especially those forest hunters." In an instant, Lin understood what Basso meant. It turned out that there was a cooperative relationship between the NGL Autonomous Country and the Hunter Association. After boarding the ship, Lin was taken to a guest room. Basso informed Lin very thoughtfully, "Mr. Lin, you can rest in the guest room or go fishing on the deck. But if you catch precious species, you need to release them. I will inform you when we get to the destination." Lin nodded. He understood what Basso meant. He didn't want to cause any trouble when he was about to reach his destination. He raised his hand and pointed to the room, indicating that he would not leave the room and wait for Bazuo's notification. Bazuo smiled slightly, knowing that Lin understood his reminder, turned around and left here. Entering the guest room, Rin lay on the bed, cherishing the rest time before entering the forest, closed his eyes and fell asleep. Chapter 54. He slept very soundly, and it wasn't until there was a knock on the door that Lin opened his eyes in a daze. After stretching, Lin opened the door and saw Basso standing at the door with his signature smile. "Mr. Lin, we have arrived at our destination. Here are your pass and some field supplies." As Bazuo spoke, he handed a card to Lin, picked up a backpack next to him, and placed it at Lin's feet. Seeing how well prepared the other party was, Lin couldn't help but marvel at the other party's professionalism. After putting away the card that Basso handed over, and carrying a backpack full of supplies, Lin was not prepared to stay on the ship, so he followed Basso off the ship. Mr. Lin, I can only send you here. Keep going along this road, and you will meet the troops stationed on the outskirts of the forest. Just give the certificate to them for verification. I hope you can come back safely and I'm waiting for your message. The information given by Bazuo was very detailed, and Lin was not prepared to stop. He nodded to Bazuo, waved to him, turned around and walked in the direction Bazuo had just directed. After walking for about half an hour, not far in front of Lin, one could already see the troops stationed by the royal family setting up a checkpoint in front. The soldiers on duty also saw Lin's figure. A dozen soldiers immediately raised their weapons and were cautiously on guard against him. Being targeted by more than a dozen soldiers with dark muzzles, Lin continued to move forward without showing any fear. 5 meters away from the pass, the stationed officer shouted, "Passage is not allowed in the front, raise your hands above your head and return immediately." Lin ignored the officer's words. Weapons like firearms were like toys to Lin today, not to mention that he had legal procedures. When the officer spoke, Lin stopped moving forward, took out the pass given by Basso and held it high. The officer standing opposite naturally knew what Lin was holding and shouted, "Keep your current posture and move forward slowly, don't make any drastic moves." When he got close to the checkpoint, Lin handed the pass to the officer. Without embarrassment, he verified the authenticity of the pass, checked the backpack that Lin was carrying, and then let Lin enter the checkpoint. The officer handed the pass to Lin and explained, "It takes about an hour to walk straight from here to Tomi's forest. Hunting of protected animals is not allowed in the forest, and damage to the forest environment is not allowed. Any items carried in the forest need to be registered when you come out. Do you understand?" After hearing a series of disallowances, Lin nodded, knowing that this was what he needed to know before entering Tomi's forest. Just say the first few things and listen. The most important point is that any items you bring into the forest need to be registered when you come out. This is a charge item stipulated by the NGL Autonomous Kingdom. According to the valuation of the items brought out by the explorers from the forest, the explorers need to pay 40% of the value of the items before they can take them away. As for whether Lin will bring something out? If he doesn't come out with a lot of resources, what's the purpose of coming here? The storage room will serve its function perfectly. Moreover, Lin entered Tomi's forest under the pretext of the association's investigation of forest ecology, so he would not attract anyone's attention when he came out empty-handed. Rin nodded, put away the pass, put his backpack on again, and left here quickly. After walking forward for about an hour, the green surrounding Lin became more and more lush, and soon the outline of a forest appeared in front of Lin. There must be the A-level ingredients I need in this forest. Maybe S-level is not impossible. Seeing the forest not far away, Lin couldn't help but speed up his pace with full expectation. Entering Tomi's forest, Lin was not prepared to stay at the outskirts of the forest for too long, but carefully observed the surrounding environment. After advancing for a while, Lin thought to himself, "Sure enough, as I thought, the resources on the outskirts of the forest have been exhausted through countless explorations, and there are not even small animals left. Now that the peripheral resources have been exhausted, it means that no two rare and powerful animals will appear here. Staying here for too long is completely meaningless to Lin." Rin made up his mind and prepared to go to the depths of the forest. Although the pace has accelerated, after the lessons learned from the last ruins, the vigilance has never been put down, but gradually increased as the depth continued. The forest was densely covered with weeds. As it went deeper, the paths that had been walked by previous people had disappeared. Every step Lin took was on the grass. It was only because of the special steps he took that there was no sound. As Lin continued to go deeper, more and more small animals began to appear around him. Lin knew that the range where small animals could move must be the beginning of a biological chain, which meant that there were no powerful creatures around. Lin expanded the circle area in order to determine the density of small animals around him. Under normal circumstances, using circle in the forest will attract the attention of some powerful creatures. When you sense the other person can also sense your presence. For powerful creatures, instinct makes them alert. This approach is tantamount to exposing yourself to danger without knowing for sure whether you are safe. But in the dense forest, Lin needs to determine the direction, a path with fewer small animals, leading deeper into the forest. After determining the direction, Lin stepped on the weeds and began to move deeper into the forest. Various sounds were heard in the forest, and the growth of plants was obviously becoming more and more prosperous the deeper they went. In order to move forward faster, Lin took out Wusheng and used it as a machete to destroy the obstacles blocking the road. As Lin continued to go deeper, he finally found traces of large animals at night. Along Lin's path, the surrounding grass and trees showed signs of damage. It was obvious that these things blocked the path of this creature and was caused by its brute force collision. This also proves that although this creature is powerful, it lacks intelligence. After taking a look at his surroundings, Lin frowned secretly. The sun was about to set, and the visibility in the forest was gradually declining. It was not suitable to continue exploring the forest in the dark environment. The dangers at night were even more terrifying than during the day. Lin had read information about Tommy Forest before. According to the informant, Tommy Forest was the safest during the day. Every night, the forest will be a carnival paradise for some special poisonous insects and monsters. An expedition team once encountered an attack by a monster. According to survivors' descriptions, the group of monsters was very insidious and cunning. They took advantage of them to relax their vigilance at night and released poisonous insects containing hallucinogenic toxins to surprise the camp. After reducing the number of combatants in the camp through sneak attacks, the monsters came out in droves and set out to harvest their prey. Chapter 55. Warcraft is a species unique to the hunter world. The biggest difference between beasts and other creatures is that Warcraft are highly intelligent, and some of them are even more cunning than humans. In Lake Mobius, although the number of monsters is rare, many of them are dominated by ethnic groups. Warcraft hide in various mountains and swamps and do not have much goodwill toward humans. Especially those anthropomorphic Warcraft have many special abilities. In his previous life, Lin had analyzed the origin of Warcraft based on the temperament of an old thief. Warcraft is most likely the product of genetic degradation after being eliminated from the Dark Continent by some weak creatures that came to Lake Mobius to breed. After Lin's analysis, leaving aside the Warcraft, Lin was not afraid of fights. What he was most afraid of were poisonous insects that caught him by surprise and had unknown effects. Poisonous insects with common toxins can be easily detoxified with Ziobi. But for some extremely lethal poisonous insects, Lin had no choice but to face death the moment he was poisoned, and there was no time to remove the poison. Lin did not hesitate. In order to avoid possible accidents at night, he planned to change to a comfortable environment and have a good rest in the prison. He would rest until dawn tomorrow before continuing to explore. Entering the warden's room of the prison, the warden's room at this time was completely different from the empty environment before. The bookshelves were filled with books and some items were placed on the ground. If you look carefully, you can see that in addition to the bed for rest, there are some expensive snacks on the market. The most eye-catching thing is that several large boxes are stacked against the wall, which contain materials for Lin to engrave divine words on. Picking up the alarm clock on his desk, Ryan set the time for tomorrow morning, then took out a book from the bookshelf, preparing to learn some knowledge before going to bed. Dang! Dang! The moment the alarm rang, one hand accurately pressed the alarm. After turning off the alarm, Lin stretched and used the tools in the warden's room to tidy up briefly. After eating something, he returned to the outside world. The outside world is still the same as when Lin entered the prison, but there are fewer sounds of animals around. It should be the remaining aura of that creature, which prevents weak creatures from approaching. Continuing to explore forward, Lin maintained a high level of vigilance. After all, he was alone and faced sudden dangers without any support. Following the traces of destruction along the way, Lin gradually went deeper, and the roar of a creature caught his attention. With special steps, Lin held Wusheng in his hand and walked cautiously towards the direction of the sound. As he continued to get closer, Lin finally saw the figure of the creature in his sight. According to the information collected by Lin, the ingredients found and recorded in Tommy's forest are divided into 22 types of A-grade ingredients. There are 67 kinds of B-grade ingredients, and countless C-grade and below ingredients. Of course, there are many undiscovered ingredients, mainly because the national conditions of the NGL autonomous country are such that not just anyone can enter through connections like Lin. The moment he saw the creature in front of him, the information about the creature automatically appeared in Lin's mind. Earth Fury Bear, Bear genus, A-grade food. Characteristics: snow white palms, dark body, a golden vertical mark on the forehead, bad temper, strong palms, rough skin and thick flesh, difficult to penetrate with ordinary iron tools, and likes to eat honey from snowflake bees, a B and grade ingredient. The moment he recognized the Geober bear, Lin had already identified his prey and was ready to hunt the Geomaniac bear. At this moment, the violent bear in Lin's eyes was roaring at the hive in the tree, obviously preparing to dig out the honey in the hive. Seeing the snowflake bees surrounding the geoblast bear, which were constantly attacking, Lean was filled with joy. Unexpectedly, there was an unexpected gain. When he saw the honey produced by snowflake bees in the information, Lean was also greedy for a long time. Although snow bees' honey is a B and grade ingredient, it is difficult to appear on the market. It is equivalent to only hearing the name but not seeing the real thing. Seeing the geostorm bear that had begun to climb the tree, Lean knew that he had to take action. If the snow honey was eaten by the bear, he would have lost an ingredient in vain. Lean didn't dare to delay. Holding Tang Dao Wu Sheng, he rushed towards the earth-violent bear at an extremely fast speed. The earth-violent bear with only snowflakes and nectar in its eyes naturally couldn't find Lean, who was hiding quietly. The surrounding snowflake bees were also targeting the attacking enemy, which gave Lean the opportunity to strike a fatal blow. Lean knew that the earth-dire bear's weakness was the golden vertical lines on its forehead, but with his strength, there was no need to deliberately attack the weakness. Rushing forward, Lean slashed Wu Sheng's sword wrapped in Nian Qi before the earthly violent bear could react. In an instant, blood splashed everywhere, and the geomaniac bear's head flew high into the sky, with a look of persistence for snowflake nectar in its eyes. After killing the violent earth bear, Lean wrapped his whole body with mind energy, climbed up the tree in twos, and came to the location of the beehive. Looking at the snowflake bees that kept flying out of the hive, Lean took out a glass jar from the storage space and began to collect the snowflake nectar. As the snowflake nectar flows down, the fragrance of honey gradually wafts out. Lean, whose whole body had been wrapped in snowflake bees, was drooling unsatisfactorily under the protection of the mental energy barrier. After putting the jar of collected honey into the storage room, Lean knocked away the snowflake bees attached to his body and came to the front of the earth storm bear. Looking at the two snow-white bear paws of the earth fury bear, Lean raised Wushan and said, "Shua! Shua!" He cut it off with 2 knives and put it in the storage room. Looking at the remaining body of the earth dire bear, Lean, who was familiar with the information, was completely uninterested. Only the 2 snow-white bear paws were the essence of the earth dire bear. Then, his attention began to shift to the dead snowflake bee that had previously attacked the geoblast bear. He took out a tray from the storage room and began to collect them. As noon approached, Lean found an open area nearby, took out the processed bear paws, and thought about how to use these fine ingredients. In his previous life, Lean followed the state banquet chef. Although he only did vegetables cutting, carving, and odd jobs, he still learned a lot through his own eyes and ears. After thinking for a while, the first thing Lean gave up was barbecue. First of all, bear paws were not suitable for barbecue. Secondly, for grilled dishes, the flavor of the seasonings can easily exceed the original taste of the ingredients, thus losing the soul of the high-quality ingredients. After thinking about it and judging the pros and cons, Lean decided to adopt the most primitive method of steaming bear paws. After deciding on the method, Lean smiled and took out the tools and condiments needed to make bear paws from the storage room. These living supplies have been stored for a long time after Lean left the Sky Arena, and today they are finally no longer covered in dust. Chapter 56. Wrap the bear's paw with some spices, use a brush to apply the snowflake honey in the jar to the bear's paw, and then wrap the bear's paw in plastic wrap. Then Lean took out the tray where the snowflake bees were stored, and used tweezers to remove all the tail stingers and venom sacs of the snowflake bees. After burying them, he placed the processed snowflake bees in the tray. After finishing processing the materials on hand, Lean picked up some firewood from the surroundings and placed them in a circle of stones. Looking at the rising flames, Lean put on the iron pot and took out a bucket of water and a bucket of oil from the storage room. This bucket of water is one of the ingredients purchased by Lean Company. It is considered a D-level ingredient. It was collected from a cave in a mineral mountain and is called raw water. The raw water is collected by the stalactites in the cave, absorbing the upper groundwater veins and collecting the dripping water droplets. Because it takes a lot of time to collect raw water, the water is highly purified and contains minerals that are beneficial to the human body, so the price on the market is not cheap. Putting the raw water aside, Lean opened the lid of the cooking oil and poured the oil in his hand into the pot. After watching the oil in the pot bubble slightly, Ryan held the tray, put the snowflake bees inside into the oil pot and started frying. Listening to the sizzling sound in the oil pan, Lean stood aside with a colander, ready to take out the fried snowflake bees at any time. Not long after, a delicate fragrance penetrated into Lean's nose. Without any hesitation, he immediately picked up the spoon and scooped the fried snowflake bees into the tray. After swallowing the saliva in his mouth, Lean looked at the golden fried bees on the tray and eagerly picked one up and put it in his mouth. Crack! Crack! The moment he took a bite, the crisp texture and the fragrance of nectar filled Lean's mouth. Delicious! It seems that this snowflake bee should be considered an A-grade ingredient. Long-term harvesting of nectar makes their bodies constantly nourished by various nectars. They taste different and can even feel the warmth flowing through their bodies. The picking speed in his hands continued unabated, and Lean tasted the deliciousness of the ingredients while eating. This made Lean, who likes sweets, feel conquered. After finishing the deep-fried snowflakes in the tray, Lean thought to himself, I need to collect more snowflakes to take away. I don't know when I'll come here next time. After wiping his mouth, Lean cleaned the utensils, feeling the sweet fragrance in his mouth, and turned his eyes to the bear paws that were still pickled. Snowflake bees are so delicious, so how delicious will this bear's paw, which often steals honey, be pickled with snowflake honey? As Lean waited for the pickling to be completed, he began to look forward to what kind of surprises the Earth Fury Bear's bear paws would bring to him. With full expectations, Lean waited patiently. His understanding of food in his previous life made him very clear that a delicious dish requires excellence in every process. In this way, after the dishes are completed, the limit of a craftsman's cooking skills can be reached. Feeling that the time was almost up, Lean began to pour raw water into the pot and waited for the water to boil. That's it. The water had begun to boil, so Lean took off the plastic wrap wrapping the bear's paws and put the plate containing the bear's paws into the steamer. After the bear paws were steamed, Lean was not idle. When he fried the snowflake bees before, he didn't need to consider the heat because it was fried quickly. But steaming bear paws depends on the heat. If the heat is too high, the meat will fill your teeth and look old, and it will be like wax when you eat it. If the heat is too low, the meat inside will not be steamed properly, so Lean must always pay attention to the heat. The bear paws were steamed in the steamer for about 30 minutes, and an alluring fragrance floated in the air. Lean's saliva flowed down due to his instinctive reaction. Knowing that this phenomenon was just foreplay, just the fragrance released after the skin of the bear's paw was steamed, Lean was looking forward to the final product, while keeping an eye on the heat and being wary of the dangers caused by the fragrance. Lean knew very well that the fragrance in the forest would bring certain dangers, but for him, the current dangers were within controllable range. Attracting danger, can beat it equals high-end ingredients equals high-end dishes equals satisfy the taste buds equals improve the infinite body. Attracting danger, cannot be defeated equals run away with the pot equals full equals increase strength equals come back for revenge. As time passed, the aroma brought out by the steam became stronger and stronger. Lean, who was standing by, kept swallowing his saliva, and he could not help but feel the desire to eat. Wait for a while. Just wait for a while. It will be fine. Lean kept telling himself in his heart that it was really great to be born in the Celestial Dynasty in his previous life. Otherwise, if such good ingredients can only be grilled and eaten in the end, then it is really a waste of money. If you travel in this world for nothing, you might even be struck by lightning. All right. With a secret thought in his mind, Lean burst out as fast as he could, taking off the steamer and placing it on the prepared tray. Opening the lid of the steamer, a mist instantly obscured Lean's sight, and then a strong and mellow smell hit his nose. The steam dissipated, and the bear paw in the steamer appeared in front of Lean. The pure white meat has been steamed until it becomes transparent, like jelly, and even the bones inside are clearly visible. It's delicious. You know it's delicious even without eating it. This was Lean's only thought at the moment. Picking up the chopsticks that had been prepared, I couldn't wait to pick up a piece of meat. Seeing the bear paw meat that was easily picked up, swinging from side to side like jelly, Lean immediately put it into his mouth. A rich and mellow taste, coupled with the unique fragrance, rushed straight into his mind, and Lean instinctively let out an imaginative moan. Lean didn't know how to describe the taste that entered his mouth. The moment it enters the mouth, a light and mellow fragrance fills the entire mouth and nose, and the elasticity of the bear's paw keeps beating in the mouth. There is no need to chew it with teeth, the bear paw meat seems to be constantly melting in the mouth, and before it can experience the deeper beauty, it flows into the stomach according to Lean's instinct. In an instant, a heat flow that was several times more powerful than when he ate fried snowflake bees surged through Lean's body, constantly nourishing his body. Cool. At this moment, Lean completely became a prisoner of the bear's paws, eating the bear's paws on the plate one bite after another. When Ryan's chopsticks touched the plate, he knew that he had finished eating the bear paw. Suddenly, a sense of loss appeared in his heart. Sure enough. Beautiful things can't stand to be enjoyed. With a sigh in his heart, Lin couldn't help but think. Since an A-grade ingredient plus a B-grade ingredient can perform to this extent, then how delicious are ingredients above A-grade? And Lin's eyes were looking into the distance, as if he was making some kind of determination towards a goal. At this moment, he became more and more looking forward to the future. Chapter 57. After eating the bear's paws from the earth dire bear, Lin coveted the ingredients of Tommy Forest even more. After walking alone in the forest for 2.5 days, Lin took action frequently and stored a large amount of ingredients in the storage room, but there were only 2 A-grade ingredients. Although these 2 ingredients exist in the data, they have brought a great improvement to Lin's infinite body. I don't know if the recovery effect occurred after the infinite body was upgraded. After waking up in the morning, Lin could clearly feel that his vocal cords had improved a lot, but he still couldn't speak. In the early morning, Lin returned to Linsen from prison, determined his position, and continued walking deep into the forest. Lin knew very well that the creatures that could be captured in the periphery were definitely not powerful. Obtaining a few A-level ingredients was purely a fluke. The real good stuff was still deep in the forest. Continuing to move deeper, because there is prison space, Lin is not afraid of the dangers that may occur at night. Naturally, he does not need to save energy when traveling during the day. It's just that the deeper Lin went, the more drastic the surrounding environment changed. The surrounding trees cover the sky and the sun, just like a virgin forest. The huge branches are crisscrossed, completely blocking the sky, and only a little bit of sunlight shines through the gaps. Is the soil of this forest so fertile? There is a special reason. Seeing such a grand scene, Lin couldn't help but secretly guess that it was a pity that he was not a forest hunter and could only focus on obtaining high-end ingredients. As he kept walking along the road, various roaring sounds began to appear around Lin. The sounds came and went one after another, as if they were creatures communicating. Faced with this situation, Lin leaned against the tree, guessing that this was a powerful creature nearby claiming his territory. Thinking of this, Lin's eyes lit up and he said to himself, "I'm really sleepy and I'm giving you a pillow. Now I can have a different lunch today." Listening quietly to the roars of the surrounding creatures, Lin determined the direction of the nearest sound, stepped quietly, and quietly touched it. Hiding behind the big tree, Lin peeked out and saw a snow-white tiger in front of him. Ryan has never seen the information about this tiger, which means that it is an undiscovered food. Although the level of white tiger is unknown, judging from her form, she is at least an A-level rare species. Lin felt a little excited in his heart, and he tightened his grip on Wu Sheng, preparing to rush in and give this high-grade food a fatal blow. Roar! Just when Lin was about to take action, the snow-white tiger raised its head, sniffed, and roared in Lin's direction. This roar interrupted Lin's rhythm, but now that he was discovered, he gave up his plan to make a surprise attack. Lin knew very well that with his current strength, there were almost no creatures outside this forest that could pose a threat to him in terms of combat effectiveness. The only things that need to be watched out for are those insidious monsters and poisonous insects that are difficult to detect. The moment the white tiger spotted Lin, its snow-white hair exploded, and while roaring, it rushed towards Lin. Holding Wu Sheng in his hand, Lin looked at the white tiger galloping towards him without any fluctuation in his eyes. The white tiger rushed near Lin and rushed towards Lin with its big mouth open. Leaning back, Lin escaped the white tiger's attack and slashed his knife through the white tiger's abdomen. When the white tiger landed, its organs were scattered all over the floor. After struggling for a while, it lost the breath of life. Looking at the fur stained red with blood, Lin couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. The previous attack on the white tiger's abdomen was not only to obtain food, but also to retain a complete tiger skin. It seems like it will take a lot of effort. It has to be cleaned in the end anyway, so it won't get in the way. After comforting himself, Lin took Wu Sheng and stepped forward to dismember the white tiger. As soon as he approached the white tiger, Lin immediately noticed something was wrong. What was wrong was not the white tiger in front of me, but the ground that was shaking. Moreover, Lin discovered that the roaring sound had stopped at some point, and the entire forest seemed to fall into silence for an instant. After putting the white tiger into the storage room, Lin jumped to a big tree in 2 or 3 steps, hiding himself and observing the surrounding situation. Not long after, Lin heard a chaotic trampling sound. Based on the chaos of the sound, it was obvious that more than one creature had arrived here. This phenomenon aroused Lin's curiosity. He didn't understand why the habits of this group of animals were so strange. They clearly had their own territories, but they rashly entered the white tiger's territory in groups. The chaotic sounds gradually approached, and the shaking on the ground became stronger and stronger. Under Lin's observation, 7 creatures appeared in his sight. Lightning raccoon, long-haired yak, silver leopard. According to the information he knew, there were only 4 species that Lin could name. The information about the rest of the creatures was not recorded in the information. This is good news for Lin. As the saying goes, dragons do not live with snakes, and if they can be with A-grade ingredients, they will definitely not be any worse. What puzzled Lin was that these creatures were very quiet and did not make any roars. They just smelled the white tiger's blood. Smell. Thinking of this, Lin finally understood why the white tiger found him. Lin smiled bitterly. He didn't expect that he was still careless and forgot about the inherent advantages of natural creatures. In other words, I have been discovered now, but why haven't they attacked me yet? While Lin was secretly puzzled, a burst of wind came from behind. Lin, who was always vigilant, had already taken precautions. The moment he turned around, he swung his knife at an extremely fast speed, and blood suddenly fell from the air. Lin looked intently and saw that a fiery red raccoon had been cut in half by her. This raccoon was the lightning raccoon that Lin had just seen. Unexpectedly, it snuck up behind him and suddenly launched a sneak attack. The moment he saw the death of the lightning raccoon, the ferocious beasts below were no longer hiding, their eyes were pointed at Lin, and they roared continuously. Knowing that his position had been exposed, Lin jumped directly from the tree, holding Wu Sheng in front of him and preparing for battle. Now Lin had a rough idea of what was going on. It should be the dead white tiger that was sending some kind of message through its roar. What puzzled Lin was how these ferocious beasts suddenly became so united and actually formed a group to go out. Suddenly, a bad premonition came to his mind. Although he was a little confused, since these ferocious beasts were in front of him, it was impossible not to turn them into food. The moment Lin jumped down from the tree, those ferocious beasts had already charged towards him. Seeing the high-end ingredients speeding towards him, Lin thought to himself, it's just what I want. Wu Sheng swung again and again, and several rays of sword light were slashed out. The fierce beasts at the front had no time to react, and scars were cut on their bodies. The ferocious beast behind saw its companion who was injured by the sword light, and with the help of the cover of the companion's body, it jumped over the speeding sword light and continued to rush towards Lin. Chapter 58. Seeing the ferocious appearance of the ferocious beast, Lin took a deep breath, held the knife in front of him, assumed an offensive posture, and thought to himself, Yingyu sword technique. With the help of his right foot, Lin's body sprinted forward at a speed that was faster than the afterimage. The moment he passed over each of the ferocious beasts, he used the invisible light of the sword to take away their lives. Yingyu sword technique was originally a sword technique inherited from Lin's family in his previous life. It was combined with a complete set of breathing techniques to produce extremely fast slashes at the expense of physical strength. Before learning the ability to read telekinesis, Rin could only swing a few swords with all his strength before he was exhausted. Therefore, he once thought that this was a sword technique that was not about killing the enemy or himself. Now, Lin has not only mastered Nian, but the infinite body has also provided him with a powerful physique, so that he will not be limited by the body, and this sword technique has more development directions. Whew! With a gentle breath, Lin turned his head to look at the ferocious beast lying on the ground, and slowly walked over. Under Lin's observation, most of the ferocious beasts were dead, and several of them were already in a dying state. This was the result of Lin's deliberate reservation. He was going to conduct an experiment on these ferocious beasts that had lost their ability to resist. Standing in front of the beast, Lin tried to put the dying beast into prison. After trying it for a while, Lin thought to himself, sure enough, if you don't have a crime value, you can't be sent to prison. In this case, you won't be able to use the interrogation room, and you won't be able to know why these ferocious beasts behave in such weird ways. Frowning slightly, Lin did not dwell on the status quo. Several rays of sword flashed by, ending the lives of these ferocious beasts. After turning the ferocious beasts into rare ingredients and putting them in the storage room, Lin was in a good mood. Although he didn't understand the cause of the abnormality, with his current strength, he was confident in facing danger. After taking out a bottle of water from the storage room and replenishing his body with water, Rin determined the direction and continued walking deeper into the forest. As he continued to march, Lin realized that the previous batch of ferocious beasts might have been all the creatures in this area. This also means that this area no longer has much exploration value. Thinking of this, Lin couldn't help but speed up his pace. Puff! With a backhand slash, a small green snake was cut in half by Lin. Looking at the little snake whose body was separated and still twisting, Lin gradually frowned. Looking at Poison, who was divided into two halves and still showing his desire to attack, Lin almost lost count of the number of times he was attacked by sneak attacks. Every time a creature launched a sneak attack, there was poison in its body, and as Lin continued to go deeper, the intervals between sneak attacks became increasingly dense. Unlike the area where Lin hunted ferocious beasts, there was almost no trace of ferocious beasts here. The sounds in the forest are getting quieter and quieter, with only the chirping of some insects. The surrounding flowers and plants are colorful and charming, and it is obvious at a glance that they contain certain toxins. Observing the surrounding environment vigilantly, Lin felt that when he got here, he should not be far from the inner layer of Tommy Forest, because Tommy Forest had begun to show its fangs. As he continued to advance, the frequency of poisonous insects began to gradually increase, and Lin even saw the broken limbs of many poisonous insects. At this moment, Lin finally knew why there were almost no traces of large ferocious beasts in this area. Because of the existence of these poisonous creatures, this area has become a restricted area for vicious beasts. Using the surrounding flowers and plants containing toxins as food ensures a growth environment for poisonous insects. The devouring of each other by poisons will also become nourishment for the winner, making these poisons more and more toxic and evolving into various toxins. Just like raising goo, and as time passes, their offspring will continue to increase their potential, but this process will be quite long in Lin's opinion. If it's in this area, you can try using circles. Lin analyzed in his mind. Lin did not use circle detection before because he was afraid of exposing himself and causing uncontrollable danger. But with Lin's strength at the time, he wasn't very afraid of this. Although he didn't know what he would face, escaping was still not a problem. The reason why Lin did this was more because he was afraid that the rare ingredients would sense danger and hide them. This will not only make Lin's search more difficult, but will also cause a lot of things to be missed along the way. However, there will obviously be no normal ferocious beasts in this area. The territory where poison is respected, and its strong xenophobia will not allow other creatures to exist. After activating Circle, a strong aura spread out with Lin as the center, and the situation within 1 kilometer around him appeared in his perception. After sensing the surrounding situation, Lin already had a clear direction for the next route in his mind, heading towards a direction with fewer poisonous insects. The reason why we choose the direction with less poison is not because less means absolutely safe, but because less poison means that that direction is the territory of a powerful poison. In a one-on-one situation, Lin was not afraid of even poisonous things, but with endless sneak attacks, if he made one mistake, whether he could save his life or not would depend on luck. As he walked and sensed along the way, the number of poisonous attacks on Lin became less and less, and the surrounding trees and plants became increasingly rare. Observing this situation, Lin became more vigilant, hesitated a little, and continued to use the circle to sense the surrounding environment. The moment the circle was expanded, the surrounding information appeared in Lin's perception. When the information came into his mind, Lin showed a surprised expression, his legs exploded at extreme speed, and he quickly ran towards the depths. In Lin's perception, with him as the center, densely packed centipedes surrounded him from all directions, and with the breath he just released, the number of centipedes gathered became more and more. At this moment, Lin finally understood why there were fewer and fewer poisons in this area and why the plants were sparse. It turns out that this area is the territory of this group of centipedes. While running at extremely high speeds, densely packed centipedes appeared in front of Lin. Such a huge number made his hair stand on end. This direction is the direction with the smallest number of centipedes according to Lin's perception, but it is obvious that this small number further demonstrates the power of nature. Stopping his progress, Lin didn't look panicked at all at this moment, but just a little bit sad, as if he was sighing at the power of nature. Looking at the black torrent in front of him, Lin knew that in the hunter world, neither individual strength nor technological strength could compare to the power of nature. The nature of this world has given birth to various creatures, environments, and various problems that humans cannot solve, including in that distant continent. But that's the only way to have fun, isn't it? In a short period of time, Lin thought a lot and showed no desire to escape or attack. Looking at the approaching danger, his eyes were full of indifference. Just as Lin stayed at this moment, centipedes all around him came up one after another. To the naked eye, they looked like a black tide, gradually spreading toward him. Chapter 59. Sure enough, you can't use circles to feel it casually. Do I smell so good? It's so dense and disgusting. This was the last thought in Lean's mind, and then he looked at the spreading black torrent and his body disappeared. In the prison warden's room, the moment Lean appeared, he smiled. For Lean, this method of returning to the prison to take refuge without any hidden dangers was simply a life-saving skill. When Reen was in the ruins before, he was willing to face the time ants with Jin. In addition to saving Biscay, facing his own heart, and not wanting to abandon his friends when encountering danger, there was also the reason for the security of the prison. But this kind of protection is not omnipotent. Assuming that Lean did not escape from the ruins at that time, Jin would definitely seal the ruins once he escaped to prevent time ants from harming the I-Chen continent. Faced with the danger of time ants, the Hunter Association will definitely not open the ruins immediately without guaranteeing that the time ants will be exterminated, but will have to make sufficient plans and preparations. If Lean runs out of consumables within this period of time, he will definitely fight to the death, and the result is obvious. If he can die with the time ants by then, he will be considered a big advantage. After facing the time domain of the time ants, Reen was controlled and almost fainted, unable to enter the prison at all. Although he has lost 5 years of his life, will Lean, who has a prison, be afraid of the loss of his life? It's just a matter of catching a few more criminals with telekinesis. After all, in the hunter world, there are many criminals with telekinesis. What Jin said is indeed true. Talents should be the strongest, not just in telekinesis, physical skills and knowledge, but in all aspects. But these require continuous accumulation of knowledge, which is also my biggest shortcoming now. Back in prison, Lean felt grateful after using the prison to escape danger for the first time, and once again reflected on Jin's words. But after this experience, Lean decided that he must keep a clear mind in the future. When encountering danger, he would be called tough, and running away from danger would be called cowardice. Both of these methods will affect a person's growth. After thinking about it, Lean decided that in the future, unless he encounters danger beyond his ability, prison should be used as a trump card. After all, you can never truly grow by avoiding yourself. A person's height is definitely not achieved through hard work, but through hard work, experience, and the accumulation of knowledge. In addition, in the forest of Kaitamai, Lean made up his mind to stock up on more supplies. He had a hunch that they would be needed in the future. After making some plans for the future, Lean looked at the 3 large boxes on the wall, which were materials for Lean to inscribe divine characters on. After opening the box where the materials for the divine characters were stored, Lean picked up a wooden block with the divine characters carved on it and thought about it carefully. The further the divine characters are inscribed, the more complex the internal structure becomes. So far, Lean has been able to carve 189 out of the 97 basic divine characters. Looking at the wooden block in front of him, Lean suddenly had a bold idea. Although the divine words are very helpful to those with the ability to read, they are not suitable for carrying around. The internal structure of the divine word is very complex. Once the internal structure is damaged due to impact or other damage, it is one thing that it cannot be activated, but if the energy is chaotic and explodes, it is really a mistake. At this moment, Lean had many ideas in his mind regarding the application of divine words. But almost all ideas are still a long way from being implemented. After all, the reason why Lean learns so quickly is because of the foundation in his previous life and his current accumulation. Now it is another process that requires accumulation of knowledge and enough time to study. But there is no need to worry about this situation. After all, he is hiding in prison now and does not need to worry about anything else. He can just concentrate on his studies. Wait for a while and slowly leave the area where the poisonous insects are. He continued to study the divine characters. This time, Lean made no plans at all. He didn't even care about the time and devoted himself to the study of the divine characters. When Reen decided to immerse himself in learning the divine words, a pink-haired woman was being examined in the army stronghold in Tommy Forest. Okay. There's no problem with your ID. You can go in, but you need to know that it's not allowed. Under the officer's disapproval, the pink-haired woman took the pass and ID, and slowly walked into Tommy's forest in the direction the officer said. Watching the pink woman leave, the officer rubbed his chin with his hand and thought, it's so rare for such a young professional hunter to be a woman. Being immersed in learning for a long time may be boring for some people, but Lean is different. His strong thirst for knowledge comes from his desire to explore the endless unknown and improve his ability to survive in the unknown. Failure. Failure. Success. Failure. Failure. As the number of wood chips around him gradually increased, Lean became more and more skilled in carving divine characters. He reached into the box and found that the wood blocks had already been consumed. After silently calculating, Lean thought to himself, I have learned 137 in total, and there are still 52 basic divine words left. It will be really more and more difficult to inscribe in the future. Sensing the level of mental energy consumption, Lean decided to take a rest first and regain enough energy to go out and see what was happening with the poisons. When he woke up, Lean felt refreshed, tidied up, ate something casually, and left the prison with Wu Sheng. The outside sunlight is blocked by the trees, and little bits of sunlight shine through the gaps in the branches. The moment he appeared in the outside world, Lean saw the surrounding environment. The poison like a black torrent from last time was gone, and he didn't know where it was hidden. This was a good thing for Lean, as it proved that as long as he was careful, he could fight a war of attrition against these poisonous creatures while moving forward. Come on! Without any hesitation, Lean had already made up his mind and must leave here as soon as possible. As he walked along, Lean carefully observed the surrounding situation. The time now should be in the afternoon, which should be the dormant period of the poison. There shouldn't be much problem passing through this area. Based on the known situation, Lean silently analyzed it in his mind. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Lean was a little confused. He didn't understand why there were so many poisonous insects before, but now he couldn't see any of them. Although he was confused, Lean was not worried. It was always a good thing that he didn't find it. As for other problems, he would think of other solutions based on the situation. The journey was uneventful until the sun set in the west. Lean couldn't help but feel lucky. He suddenly felt that being surrounded by poisonous insects was just bad luck. What Lean didn't know at this time was that when he was lucky that he didn't encounter the poisonous insects, a pink-haired woman looked at the poisonous insects surrounding him very indifferently, with a hint of disdain in her expression. Chapter 60. Continuing to advance towards the inner layer of Tommy's forest, Lean felt that he was out of the area where the poison was. Wherever you look, the surrounding plants have changed a lot and are no longer so charming. There were even sounds of small animals calling from the trees, and even one or two insects that Lean didn't recognize. Finally, we've moved forward a little bit. I wonder if this is the inner area. Looking at the situation in front of him, Lean analyzed it, and finally decided not to use circle for the sake of safety, but to take a closer look at the situation in this area. After walking a long distance, Lean was very confused about the situation in front of him. This area was so quiet and peaceful, not only the roars of animals, not even a poisonous insect was seen. Faced with an unusual situation, Lean was extremely cautious, fearing that he would make the same mistake as last time. Suddenly, Lean, who was walking quietly, felt a shaking in the ground. The moment he sensed it, Lean jumped away with his legs and fell onto the surrounding trees. Using the cover of trees, Lean observed the shaking land and explored the cause of the shaking. Standing on the tree and looking down, a huge frog raised its forehead from the ground and glanced around. Seeing that it was a huge frog, Lean was not prepared to expose him because he knew that the frog's vision was very poor and would not detect his presence. Although he didn't know the specific information about this frog, Lean had no appetite for this kind of creature at all, except of course the bullfrog. Watching the frog go away, before Lean could continue to explore, a black-grey python fell straight down from the tree and headed straight for the frog. There was no fight as imagined. The giant python directly pressed on the frog. Its thick snake body immediately rolled up the frog and bit it down with its slender fangs. The controlled frog made a croak sound, and its long tongue flicked out of its mouth, beating the python's body continuously. Seeing this situation, Lean was not afraid at all, because he knew very well that this was the normal state of a natural forest. The weak eat the strong, the fittest survive. The battle between the two giant creatures turned into a protracted battle due to each other's strong vitality. In the end, the frog was exhausted and the python won the victory. Seeing the giant python preparing to feast on its prey, Lean knew now was the time to take action. Lean has no relevant information about that huge frog. But Lean recognized this giant python when it attacked the frog. It was very similar to the description in a book he had read. According to book records, the grey rock python is a carnivorous animal that is good at hiding, non-venomous, and extremely vital. Except for snake gallbladder, its entire body has no edible value. The grey rock python is listed as a rare and protected species by V5, and no more than 10 of them have appeared since human beings began to record. and all the essence of the body is concentrated in the snake gallbladder. According to the book description, a snake gallbladder is worth at least 1,000 billion yen in the outside world. When he first saw this paragraph, Lin scoffed a little. What kind of snake gall is worth 1,000 billion nirvana, can it still live? However, what Lin didn't expect was that according to research, it was found that the gallbladder of this snake can really extend life, and it has an excellent effect on the elderly who are about to die. At that time, Lin was still thinking that the world is so big and full of wonders. Unexpectedly, he got lucky today and happened to encounter one. At this time, the extremely ferocious grey rock python became extremely cute in Lin's eyes. Although Lin has little demand for such items due to the existence of the prison, they are a valuable trading chip. The best time would have been to wait until the grey rock python had eaten the frog before taking action. But after the battle just now, Lin calculated in his mind that the grey rock python was no match for him. And that giant frog can be regarded as an unexpected harvest, and it can be sold without eating it. And Lin was certain that the grey rock python had already discovered him. Pythons have heat-sensing organs. It may just be because Lin is too small that the grey rock snake thinks he is not a threat. Thinking in his heart, Lin, who would not allow such a precious prey to escape, had already jumped down from the tree and rushed forward with the weapon in hand. The grey rock python next to the giant frog's body sensed Lin rushing towards him through its heat sense, and was slightly confused. It didn't understand why this weak creature didn't run away quickly, but instead rushed towards him. The provoked grey rock python twisted its body according to biological instinct and rushed towards Lin at an extremely fast speed, preparing to kill the creature that disturbed its feeding, and then continue to enjoy the newly captured prey. Seeing the grey rock python rushing towards him, Lin slashed a blade towards the grey rock python's head while running. Seeing the sword light approaching, the grey rock python twisted its body and dodged the blow without reducing its movement speed. Lin's idea was very simple. After rushing forward, he would never harm the grey rock python's body and only cut off its head. However, he did not expect that the grey rock python would react so quickly. Although the sword flash just now was mostly a test, Lin had to admire the grey rock python's reaction just now. In the dangerous Tommy Forest, it is extremely dangerous to outsiders, and the same is true for the creatures in it. Food, monsters, and natural enemies are all dangerous. Creatures that grow up in this environment, in addition to their unique individual advantages, the oppression of potential threats also makes these creatures gradually become stronger. As the two sides continued to approach, within a few seconds, the distance was less than 5 meters. The grey rock python used its body to stop rapidly and swung its tail directly towards Lin. The strong wind pressure directly blew his long hair up. Seeing the grey rock python's attack, Lin reacted extremely quickly. The moment he jumped up, he swung countless times, and a sword light flew out again. This time the grey rock python did not dodge, and the sword light directly hit its head, but the damage caused by the sword light was not deep. Although it is said to kill a snake by cutting off its head or beating it 7 inches, it depends on what kind of snake it is, and the hardest part of the grey rock python is its head. Seeing that the attack failed to work, Lin didn't hesitate in the air, threw out the knife lock and hooked it into a big tree. As the knife lock tightened, the distance was again widened. The grey rock snake's attack failed, and it flew away several trees. It roared because of the scar on its head, opened its bloody mouth, exposed its 2 fangs, and galloped towards Lin. Lin, who was standing in the tree, saw this situation and shuttled through the surrounding trees. As a result, the grey rock python could not distinguish Lin's movements and stood still to track Lin's specific location. Lin, who was constantly moving, was also condensing his mental energy, preparing a killing blow. Suddenly, the grey rock python went uncharacteristically and began to attack the surrounding trees with its thick tail, leaving Lin with no place to stay. Realizing the purpose of the grey rock python, Lin slashed out with a huge sword the moment it flicked its tail.